happened to the beard? But turns out in Japan, beards are not so popular.
Yeah, that's why you
Yeah.
shaved it, right?
Like whenever like on my line picture, I
Yeah.
still have a beard.
Hmm.
So whenever I exchange lines with a Japanese person, I
Uh-huh.
always ask them, like they always like, "Oh, you have a beard.
Hmm.
Like, is this actually you? Is this the same person?" And then I'll ask them like, "Well, what do you think's better? Like without the beard or with the beard?" And
Uh-huh.
like I'd say 90% of Japanese people say without the beard.
That's
So
crazy. That's wild. I mean, I think American people like the beard. I'm not sure.
yeah,
That's why
I
they were
think
a little
so.
bit
Yeah.
startled.
Well, I
But
mean, it makes sense because ja most Japanese people can't really grow a proper beard.
hmm.
And so they just don't bother, right?
Hmm.
And so because most Japanese people, when they try to grow a beard, they just have a little stubble.
Hmm.
I've heard that in Japan, having a beard is associated with like not being well kept, basically.
Yeah, yeah. That makes sense. Yeah, I've heard that too.
Like
Um,
seiketsukan ga nai.
right, right. Also, I mean, this is like a little bit racist, but like Japanese people have a harder time growing like full beards, right?
Well, yeah.
There's some people can do like
I
a
don't think that's
badass one,
racist. I think it's a fact. But
probably. But either way, and so like maybe that had something to do with it,
yeah, I think so.
but I don't know. Yeah, so we are in Japan right now. I don't know if Matt said you mentioned this publicly, but we both moved to Japan 2 years ago, something like that.
I'm,
Or 2 years ago, 2 years ago.
yeah, I'm still technically less than 2 years.
Okay, are you
But
gonna be at two pretty soon?
well, I first came in August of
Mm.
2022, although there was 2 months in the middle where I was back in America. So if you subtract those 2 months, then I'm
Yeah.
like what, four? I'm like closer to a year and a half, I guess. But
Uh, okay, okay. Oh, just to tell
time
everybody
flying
what's going
fast.
on real quick. We're just talking about random stuff. We're gonna start the actual, class in maybe about 7 minutes or so. We want to give some time for people to join because there's the email is I think it's still sending. It takes a long time to send because it's kind of a big email list. But anyway, um, also, we're gonna do questions at the end if you didn't see that. So if you, I mean, maybe we'll see your question here, but there is a Q&A box somewhere on the bottom of the screen, and that will be checking at the end. So if you have like a question ahead of time, you can go ahead and put it in there. But yeah, we're just gonna chill right here for about 5 minutes maybe left, and then we'll kind of jump into the actual class. Um, so how do you like it in Tokyo?
Well, I mean, yeah, I love Tokyo. But I was gonna say, like, some people are asking about my voice. Yeah, I have a bit of a cold right now.
Are
So
you still cold?
yeah, I mean, you can I can tell I sound a little nasally.
Yeah. That was like a
Yeah.
whole week ago already. Wow.
Yeah, it's been like kind of like a slow burning cold. Like it never got that bad, but then it's still like not going well. I mean, it's like 90% better. But yeah,
Yeah.
I can still hear too. My voice is like also I think my voice is worse when I first wake up, like when I have a cold. I don't know about
Mhm.
you. Probably get better. And it
Yeah, mine too. But I woke up like 3 hours ago. Prepare.
I mean,
When did you wake up?
I did too. I woke up at like
Okay.
6:30, but
That's a long. Your engine takes a while to rev up.
yeah, actually maybe I'm just sick. I don't know. But oh no, it depends. As I talk more, then it gets better. I haven't talked yet today.
Right.
So
Ken, what is
make
your
an
favorite
excuse.
color? This is the first question of the day. I don't know.
You have a favorite color?
I used to like. I don't know. It's changed when I was a teenager. I haven't thought about that question in a long time. I'm gonna go with white. I like white a lot. What about you?
I mean, when I was in first grade, my favorite color was green. I actually dyed my hair green when I was in
Mhm.
first grade.
Whoa.
It's the only time in my life I've dyed my hair. Yeah.
Whoa, when you were in first grade.
Don't know
Awesome.
what I was thinking.
Okay.
But
Yeah. Did anybody say anything about it? At
uh
school? You were at school with
I
green
mean,
hair?
I don't remember. I just remember the fact that I had green hair and like pictures of it.
Uh, oh, you don't even remember doing it.
Barely.
Wow.
I don't remember like elementary school that much. But
Wow. What's your favorite pitch accent, Matt?
my favorite pitch accent,
Yeah. I'm like trying to
um,
read the
maybe
chat.
Kansai Ben pitch accent. Is that what they're asking?
I don't know.
We're
It's
asking
already the question's gone. Matt, how does he get a Japanese girlfriend?
uh I mean law, I can't go into that one now. It's a big one.
That's a big one. That's a hard nut to
Although
crack.
speaking Japanese definitely helps, I think.
Right. Yeah, so this is our little studio room we made recently so that we can film in here because we've got scrolls and stuff. There was a shogi thing over there, but it's gone now.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah, too bad. I want to play some shogi. The real question is Matt's favorite anime and ice cream flavor.
What?
What's your favorite ice cream flavor?
Well, actually, have they call what Baskin Robbins? No, no, no.
Sati
Yeah,
Yuan.
yeah, yeah. Wait.
But it's called Baskin Robbins in
Oh yeah,
America.
I almost forgot what the English recording was called
Yeah.
because, or the English name because it's been so long. But I think what's that one flavor they have? It's called like popping something. where like when you put it in your mouth,
Oh,
has,
it's got rock. What's it
yeah,
called?
yeah, it has like pop rocks
Pop rocks in it. Yeah.
basically in it. It's like almost like cotton candy flavored. It has like pop rocks in it.
Yeah.
I forget what it's called. It's called something popping, I feel like.
I don't remember the name of it, but I remember the Pop Rocks thing. That they don't have that in America, so that was pretty wild.
Yeah,
I've never
oh my
had that
God.
in
It's
America.
like, but and it's like chocolate. It's like pop rocks coated in chocolate. It's extra good. But
Always got on that. I want to have some more of that. Okay, so we'll do some more chatting for like 3 minutes and then we'll get started maybe 9:10, 9:15. Almost there. People are still coming in, so do you think shadowing is important, says Jose?
no, important. I wouldn't say important. I would say it can help with certain things, but
Mhm.
now I think coursing is a lot more effective
Mm.
pronunciation.
Yeah. Did you talk about coursing publicly? I think we did, yeah.
Um,
A long time ago.
did we? Can't
I don't
remember. I
remember.
mean,
But
yeah.
yeah, coursing is, I mean, that they could probably search what coursing is, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, come on.
It's not like we didn't invent it, you know.
No,
Yeah.
yeah, it was invented by some Swedish linguist.
Right, right. Um, let's see here. What is coursing? What is coursing? How about pronunciation practice? Any things you dislike about Japan? I like that question. Anything you dislike about Japan? Who said that?
Mm.
Oh, it's going too quick. I can't see the name. Oh my God, it's gone. What do you dislike about Japan?
I mean, the biggest thing is probably like the bureaucracy and
Hmm.
sometimes they're not very logical, like they make you do
Yeah,
jump through silly hoops and
right.
like have inefficient processes. Like when I had to go renew my like Zairyu
Yeah,
the other day, like I had to wait for like 6 hours at this thing because you can't make an appointment and you
right.
have no idea how long it's gonna take. Like little things like that.
Yeah. I remember the first time I got here, I think I told you the story. I think it was the first day, and I bought some French fries, just a regular
Yeah.
thing to share with people. It was, like it was normal size. It's probably huge for Japan, but it was just normal size for American size. And then it came with like a teaspoon of like ketchup.
Yeah, they always do that.
And I was, oh my God. And so I asked for more ketchup when it was gone, which was like 3 seconds later. And they were just so mad. Like, no, no, we can't do that. We got, he couldn't really explain it very well, but he's like, there's regulations for the amount of ketchup that I can deliver or something. It was really
Yeah,
strange.
1 tablespoon per person. Sorry.
I was like, what? I didn't know if it was like some kind of Corona thing or not, but he was just, Ijoni
I
chisai.
mean, it's always like that.
So then,
Like, actually, I was
some
listening.
places give you extra, but that was
You
crazy.
can ask. Sometimes they'll give you maybe like one extra.
Yeah.
But reminds me, I was just listening to this Jim Gaffigan clip where he was talking about how even in America they're like a little bit stingy. He's like
Who's Jim Gaffigan?
this like stand-up comedian,
Okay, okay.
and he was like, yeah, when you're in McDonald's and you ask for more ketchup, the employee reacts like he's gonna like you're taking it from his personal stash.
Even in America, right?
Yeah, but it's
Yeah.
worse in Japan for
It
sure.
is worse in Japan. So imagine that if you can. Okay, almost getting started here. Let's see here.
A lot of people asking about Refold. I've been completely unaffiliated from Refold for unaffiliated with Refold for over 2 years now. So
Yeah, it's been a while since
I
you've
have
been
nothing to do
working.
with Refold anymore. But
So なんだよね. Let's see here. You haven't been very active. Oh, it's gone already. Are you guys thinking about coming back to YouTube?
thinking about it, I go back and forth on it, it's a
Yeah,
hard one.
right, right.
But
Let's see here. Oh yeah, also some people have asked that this is going to be recorded. We are recording it, so but we're not sure. We're not sure if we're going to release it. I mean, we'll probably give it to everyone that's registered, but we're not sure if we're going to actually, maybe not actually. We have another plan. I'll tell you about it in a sec. But we might not release it immediately. Well, anyway, let's see here. What's Matt been doing in the meantime?
I'm enjoying my life in Japan.
Mhm.
And yeah, I have a lot of other projects going that keep offline, but
Japan's been pretty nice, right?
I love
It's
it.
the first time we've lived here, so I've been here on and off for several months, but I never lived here.
Yeah, I mean, I
So
forget that I haven't lived here for like 10 years because it kind of feels like I have in a
it
way.
feels like 10 years already.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well,
No.
because like I got used to it so quickly because, spoke Japanese, studied Japanese for
Did
so
you
long.
say smoked Japanese?
Studied Japanese.
Okay.
Wait, there's no way
I think you should spoke Japanese.
I spoke Oh, yeah, 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 yeah.
Sound like
I
smoke.
see, I see.
Okay. Maybe I'm hearing what I want to hear. Go ahead.
Someone asked if I miss Oregon. Honestly, no. Like I miss my family, but that's about it. Like I went back to Oregon for 2 months last
Mm,
year,
mm.
and I was just bored out of my mind. Like there's just nothing to do. Like
Oregon
there's
is
so much
boring.
more to do in Japan. Like that's one of the things I like about Japan is that there's so many things so close together.
Yeah.
So like you can just go with your friends with no plan and be like, okay, you want to go to karaoke, you want to
Mhm.
like hit a bar, go to izakaya, where it's like,
It's so nice. It's so
yeah.
easy here, right? And
Mm.
you don't have to have a car either, especially if you're in Tokyo.
Yeah, that's the thing. I don't like driving. I don't want to have a car. So
Yeah.
for me, that's like really big.
Right, right.
So,
Okay, well, I think we're almost at. You want to answer one more thing before we go?
yeah,
One more
people keep asking
question.
about Chinese. I stopped learning Chinese years ago. I only learned Chinese for like a little bit. That's like the question that I've like I stopped learning Chinese years ago. I've been telling people I stopped learning Chinese years ago, but doesn't seem the word just doesn't seem to get out. So probably have to keep answering that question for the rest of my life. But oh, someone asked, do you miss Jukia? I don't know if this person. So like Jukia was this really famous YouTuber who had like millions of subs,
Uh-huh.
and I got interviewed by him. I was actually on his channel like a couple weeks ago,
Mhm.
and then like days after the video went up that I was in, his channel got deleted.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
Why?
because he has I don't know, he has kind of like what would you call it? Kind of like like really edgy content, I guess.
Mm,
He's like, interviewing minors but inappropriate stuff. So I guess YouTube guidelines.
interesting. Inappropriate stuff. Yeah, that doesn't sound like it doesn't sound very good. Okay, so I guess we're gonna go ahead and move into the presentation here. Um, So we are going to do, again, we're going to do questions. Let me just make sure I've got, okay, yeah. We're going to do questions at the end, Q&A. So, oh my God, there's already so many questions in the question box. That's crazy. So we're going to actually, because of that, we're going to disable the chat temporarily. And if you have a question, put it in the Q&A box. And then at the end, we're going to go through and check it all out. So this will help everyone concentrate, but we'll come back in a sec. I mean, we're still here, but just, we're going to do that. And then we're going to get started. Here we go. Let's get started on our special fancy thing. Let's see here. Do that. And then, okay. So I think we're ready to go. I click the right button, then I gotta click the other button. Where's the other button? So where's the presentation at? Oh yeah, we gotta press this. Okay.
Be careful to choose the
And
right.
this one, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. Here we go. Are we ready? All right. By the way, Edgar, are you still with us?
Hi, yes, I'm here.
Okay, yeah, so Edgar's helping us out here. He's been with me for like 10 years. He'll help us out with questions and stuff, but you can hear us and you can see the slide, right, Edgar?
I can see the slide, yes.
Okay, good. Just want to make sure everything's working because I'd be scared if it wasn't. Okay, so but you can't see us, right?
Yes, no,
Okay, it's just the slides? Okay, cool.
just the slides.
Well, yeah, that's fine for now. Okay, we'll turn that back on later. All right. Guess I'll get rid of that. And then let's see here. So as you can see, the presentation name is Do Not Learn How to Read in Japanese. If you want to sound like a native who grew up in Japan, it's also way easier to become fluent that way. So the people on our newsletter actually know this title. This was the title for the presentation. If you only saw this on Twitter, you might not be aware of this. So remember we said that there was two things that you really got to watch out for, two things that are really bad. One of them is right here. We're going to be talking about reading today. And the second one, we're going to talk about in a second here. So we're going to start out with this. This is the presentation or fancy slideshow. How do I press buttons? Okay. All right. Press that. All right, there we go. I'm just going to read the slide here. We're going to teach you this today by showing you the huge sacrifices you are making when you learn how to read in Japanese. And by learning how to read, we mean like even a little bit. So if you've already learned how to read like hiragana or katakana, unfortunately, this means you. But don't think it's too late. It's okay. And one of the reasons it's okay is because it gets incrementally worse. So the better you can read, the more kanji you can read, the faster you can read, the more you read, et cetera, the worse it gets. So that's the good news. Just kidding, actually. But in learning about these sacrifices, we're also going to be teaching how to fix it and counteract all this stuff. So if you so choose. And that part is really important if you so choose, because these sacrifices that you are making essentially are just decisions that you're making that you're not even aware of. And that's why it's so bad. So if at the end of this, presentation, you decide you still want to make those sacrifices, you might think it's a good sacrifice. At the very least, you should know what the sacrifices are, right? Okay, so today we're going to reveal them sacrifices for you. But after that, we're also going to teach you several different brand new techniques that we developed over the last year, right? So these will make you sound like a native who grew up in Japan, and it's going to make it easier and to be fluent and stuff. So pretty good deal, right? All right. Now, why is this important to you now? Most language learning methods are dead wrong, especially what people know about learning Japanese is dead wrong. And I mean, if you're part of the immersion learning community or you're doing input learning, you already know this. This is not like anything new to you. I mean, most people that try to learn Japanese, the, quote unquote, traditional route never become fluent, right? So that's old news to you. But here's the thing. Here's what's really important. This is not just true in the quote unquote, I don't know, blue pill language learning community, but also it's true for our community, the immersion learning community, right? There's actually a lot of bad information out there that gets mixed in with the good stuff, so people don't even realize it, right? Which is kind of scary. So that's one reason why this stuff we're going to talk about today is important now more than ever. But another good reason is that a lot of people don't even think about this, but you can't actually go back and relearn things. In the same way that you can't unlearn something, the common example is always like riding a bike, right? Once you learn how to ride a bicycle, they say you'll never forget. Sounds like a good thing, doesn't it? And most of the time it is, which is why people don't really think about this. But once you know how to ride, imagine this. You jump on a bike, you can't pretend that you don't know how to ride anymore. That's like not a switch in your brain that exists. It's literally gone. You've lost your freedom in that particular moment. You can't control yourself anymore in that way. So, I mean, the same also goes for reading. Man, I wish I had the camera on, but if you have a book around you or if you have a poster or anything, you can just look at it really quickly for me. Maybe there's some writing on there. Chances are, without trying to read it, you've probably already read it, right? This is a phenomenon that most of us are aware of, right? Or maybe oh, I should have done it with the slides. Look at the slides, right? You read these slides before you even tried. It was an automatic thing, right? You can't stop yourself. By the time you read it, it's already done. It's an involuntary response. So you might be thinking, well, yeah, duh. What the hell is the problem with that, right? It's always good to know things, right? Maybe. I can think of a few things where it's actually better not to know things. So think of like spoilers in a movie. You know the ending, kind of ruins the whole experience, doesn't it? Or think about when you're a kid and maybe like you walk in on your parents bumping butts at night, you can't unsee that. Probably would have been better not to see that. Totally would have been better not to know that happens at night. But those are really simple, stupid examples, right? Here's what really matters. You also can't go back and redo the things that you learned in the wrong order, especially when the order is what's inherently important. So this part is the real reason this presentation, this class is important to you right now. And, the cliche example here is like when you're building a house, you can't go back and repour the concrete foundation after you've already constructed the second story or something, right? Don't know if you know, but you can't just build a house on like some dirt. I got some dirt, I'm gonna build a house. First, you have to have some kind of foundation. Oftentimes it's concrete and rebar, but otherwise, if you don't have that concrete slab on the ground, the whole thing can collapse, and it has happened in the past. So with houses, so after you've already built the second story, it's kind of too late. And that example is like a cliche for a reason, because it's generally been true for like at least 100 years, at least for houses. So when the order is what's important for something, when the order is what matters, you only get one shot to make it right. Like, for example, the other day I was making some cheesecake, and the recipe, don't ask me why. The recipe told me, I love cheesecake, but anyway, the recipe told me to heat the cream cheese first before I mix it in with the rest of the stuff, right? And I was like, oh, that's a pain in the ass. I'm not gonna do that. I'm just gonna heat it. I'll heat it all up later or whatever. So I just put the cold cream cheese out of the refrigerator in it. And of course I was wrong. Like the cold cream cheese made the butter like clump, and it was all hard, and I couldn't mix it properly. So I mixed it way too much to compensate. and then it just took way longer. But since I mixed it too long, the oils and the butter like separated and started to like, it became this like sand cake. It was just disgusting, like little lumps in it. Oh, it was so nasty, and it was a terrible, terrible experience. Apparently this is pretty common with like cooking and stuff. A lot of times they'll tell you don't mix the dry ingredients with the wet ingredients. You mix them separately before you mix them together. And it always, for me, seemed like a little weird. Like, why can't I just mix it all together at once? So I looked it up after my sandy cheesecake, and I was like, why is this important? They said something really interesting on the internets, and they said when you mix things in different orders, the ingredients interact differently with each other at each stage. They literally behave differently with each other, even though they're the same ingredients. And I was like, whoa, that's like a really good analogy for language learning, because it's the exact same thing here. Your grammar, your vocab, your reading, all these different elements that you introduce, they're going to interact with each other differently if you introduce them in different orders. So they behave differently, even though they're the same things. You can't just do them all at the same time. They interact differently with each other. So this makes everything we're going to talk about today really, really vital. Before you learn any more Japanese, you want to understand how your ingredients are interacting with each other. And if they're interacting with each other in a way that will produce the result that you want. So let's see here. Then the last reason that this is really, really important to hear right now is, oops, I went too fast. As teachers of the language, this is the question we get asked all the time, the one I just showed you, and that is, am I too old to learn Japanese? Is it too late for me, right? We hear that all the time. You get asked that too, Matt?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And most teachers answer this with good intentions, you know. And you know what they say? They say, no, honey, baby, it's never too late, right? That's what they say. And, you know, while that's true, totally agree that's true, it's never really too late. The thing is that no teacher wants to tell you that most people kind of deep down inside already know this. You don't need me to tell you this. Yeah, it gets harder every single year that you wait to start learning. It makes perfect logical sense, right? It's not like, again, this is not news either to anyone. You know, with every passing year, you got brain plasticity goes down, fluid IQ, your fluid IQ goes down, your motivation, your drive goes down. The data on this stuff is quite clear. Now, does it go down a lot? No, it's gradual, but it goes down a little bit every year. So most people don't know. I mean, most people like know this when it comes to children, right? So if you're like 3 years old, you're going to learn faster than if you're 13 years old. Most people kind of know that in like inherently. The 3-year-old learns better, and it learns faster, but he also becomes more fluent, like with less accent. But most people forget that that's also true for someone who's 24 versus like, I don't know, 34. The 24-year-old's going to learn better. Or 54 versus 74. If you're 54, you're going to learn a little faster than someone who's 74. And it's going to be easier, less resistance. You're going to have more drive. Everything is easier, right? And, you know, most teachers don't say anything about this because they think it's demotivating. But honestly, I think it's completely the opposite. You know, knowing that no matter what age you are right now, now is always the best time to learn. It's always going to be the best time to start and to become fluent. So, you know, next year is always going to be a little harder. And that's just the nature of the human brain. I think that's the ultimate motivation, honestly. So that's the last reason why what we're going to get into is pretty important. So anyway, there's that. And then right before I'm going to pass the baton to Matt here in a second, and he's going to take us in depth into today's topic. Before we do that, I want to establish some house rules. Okay. So first of all, this is not learn Japanese in 7 days. This is not like some kind of crash course that we're going to talk about today, where you can learn how to survive as a tourist with shit Japanese for a week in Akihabara or something, right? So if you're looking for that kind of get fluent fast type of stuff, this is not the place for it. And that brings me to my next point. Way easier does not mean way faster. You may have noticed in the title for this presentation, it said, it's going to be way easier to become fluent, right? And that's true, but here's what's really important. Just because the method makes things way easier and way simpler, doesn't mean you won't have to spend the time necessary to become fluent, right? So it does mean that you're going to exert much less effort. That's cool, right? I'd like to exert less effort on a lot of things. So again, if you're someone that wants to learn Japanese like super fast without putting in the hours that you need that are necessary, then this class, this presentation probably isn't for you. So then last we got here, our results are not remotely typical. So the way we're going to describe the way we learn Japanese, the way I learned Japanese, the way Matt learned Japanese, how fast we did it, how fast like students that we taught had done it, not typical. So both of us are pretty known for like having learned Japanese in a pretty cool way. We did it pretty fast. I learned Japanese strictly through audio, so I didn't use Anki, I didn't read. Well, I was able to understand most anime within like 11 months of study. Matt also learned Japanese entirely through input and has reached like a level in Japanese that surpasses most natives. It's really crazy. I mean, he'll be the first to tell you, he's not really proud of this, but he used to have to like frequently explain vocabulary to native speakers. I've actually seen you do this. I think it was about 2 years ago now. I think you've stopped doing this, but you apparently used to do this more often. But anyway, the point is, we don't know how much time you have to dedicate this to this, right? We personally had a lot. It's not like we're geniuses in any way. We just spent a lot of time on this, right? To learn Japanese and to learn how to learn, which is even more important. We were also probably pretty lucky too, right? Like we both stumbled upon this thing called input learning pretty early. I think we were both 16. I think I was like 16. How old were you?
I was like 17.
Okay, yeah, I mean super early to learn about input learning. So we've had like 20 years. Well, no, you're not that old. Only me, I'm old. Anyway, we've had a long time to think about how to use input learning the best way. So, that's just really what it is. And it says here on the screen, most people don't learn Japanese because they aren't willing to put the time in. So every year, a lot of people try to learn Japanese, and a lot of people, quote unquote, fail. And the reason isn't because they're not smart enough or anything. It's because they didn't put in the time, to attend classes like this, to attend presentations like this, to learn how to learn, which is what we're going to do today, or to watch the videos on it. Like they didn't go to YouTube and learn how other people learn Japanese or any language for that matter, or to read books on the topic. There's a lot of books. Or more importantly, to put the hours of input in. That is like ultimately the most important thing. So at the end of the day, it is up to you. We're just here to make the job easier. So regardless of how much time you do have, we want to make sure that you get better results from it. And help your Japanese sound like you grew up in Japan. That was the tagline, I think, for the top slide. Anyway, okay, I know all this stuff is probably really self-evident, but we think it's pretty important to say. So, them's the house rules. Now, why don't we get started? Let's get to work here, learning how to learn. Matt, do you want to take it away for us?
Yes, thank you, Kim.
Of course.
Yeah, I think all that was really important, especially the stuff about age, because I think that's something that we all wonder about, we all think about, but not a lot of people are willing to just say that clearly.
Right.
But yeah, that's a real thing. So,
all right.
Yeah, moving into kind of I guess the main meal for today, you could say.
Main meal.
First, I kind of want to frame the larger problem here that we're kind of coming here to solve.
Okay.
So, like you kind of touched on a little bit ago, we could broadly say two different types of learners. Traditional learners and then immersion learners, right? If we're going to be really broad here. So traditional learners, these are people that are doing things like going to classes, just trying to use textbooks. Nowadays, you could probably also consider people using like Duolingo or any of these kind of gamified apps that aren't input and aren't really teaching you very much the language. And then on the other hand, we have immersion learners, which are people who are learning the language mainly through consuming actual native content, right? Or actually listening to native Japanese as the core of their learning. Or they probably do other things as well, like use Anki maybe to memorize vocabulary, study a little bit of grammar on the side, things like that. But the main thing they're doing is consuming native content. So it's not going to be a surprise probably to anybody watching this that traditional learners don't get very good results. They rarely go on to be fluent. And if they do go on to become fluent, it's generally because they eventually lived in the country and ended up getting a lot of input anyway, even if they don't really understand that it was the input that really helped them out that much. On the other hand, immersion learners get much better results, right? At this point, when I first started my YouTube channel many years ago, there was almost nobody on the internet really talking about their experience doing immersion learning. But now there's hundreds of people who have kind of put the method into practice and have actually gotten fluent in Japanese, which is really cool. But the real problem here is, although these immersion learners are still getting fluent and they're getting very good results, especially compared to the traditional learners, they're not reaching native level, right? When you look at all the people who've kind of talked about their experience learning Japanese and things like this on the internet, none of them are really at native level. And I noticed this very early on. I noticed it in myself as well. And I've kind of spent my career as a YouTuber, content creator, whatever you want to call it online, trying to figure out why this is and kind of try to solve it. And over the years, I've kind of gathered more and more pieces to the puzzle and started to kind of get a clear picture of really what's going on here. But it was really when I discovered someone named J. Marvin Brown that kind of everything clicked, and I felt like I really had the deeper understanding of why this is and what's going wrong in the learning process. So J. Marvin Brown, I think you can say his discoveries show us very clearly why people in the emerging learning community still aren't reaching native level. He kind of single-handedly cracked the code for how to reach native level, and he did this decades ago. That's kind of the crazy thing, right? So he's kind of this true unsung legend of language acquisition that almost nobody knows about, even though all his discoveries happened literally decades ago. And it was really learning about him and reading his autobiography and learning about his life that was kind of the final piece that significantly changed my view on language learning about 2 years ago at this point. So I want to kind of tell Brown's story and kind of walk you through his life and how he arrived at the discoveries that he did in order to share this perspective with you of what's been going wrong in the language learning, in the way people in the immersion learning community have been learning, and how we can fix that. So J. Marvin Brown, he was an American linguist, and he was born in 1925. He passed away in 2002. So like I said, all of his work happened literally decades ago. And his mission in life, well, ever since he was relatively young, probably in his 20s, was to help adults become native in a second language. So basically, the way his life kind of unfolded was that he was trained as a linguist formally at a university in America, and then he moved to Thailand, and he had this long period of his life where he worked really, really hard to master the Thai language. And this was at a period of time where it was pretty much unheard of for foreigners to actually speak Thai. So there was almost no resources. He had to really do things all on his own. So because there weren't really a lot of textbooks or anything you could buy back then, he had to use his linguistic training and his kind of knowledge just about linguistics to kind of analyze Thai grammar and vocab by himself and kind of piece together the language. And after many, many years of working really hard, he talked about like staying coped up in his room and analyzing novels in Thai and things like this for many hours every day. He eventually reached what people called a legendary level of Thai, where when he would speak to a Thai person over the phone, the Thai person would be convinced that he was a native speaker. So after he had this long period of like 10 years just learning Thai himself, he then started teaching. So in the 1970s, he got hired to create and teach classes for teaching the Thai language to foreigners and also teaching English to Thai people. Now, his classes were extremely methodical and rigorous. So basically, he would just be logically explaining how vocab and grammar points work, and then he really believed in drills. He had people just practice drills over and over and over with this kind of practice makes perfect mindset, because in his mind, that's how he learned Thai, and of course, he got really good. So he's like, well, I'll just have the students do what I did. But his students greatly struggled with his lessons. Basically, they would practice the drills over and over and over, but they just seemingly would never improve. And so, from Brown's perspective, right, he believed so much in this way of learning. That's how he got good. So he's like, okay, time to just double down. And so he revamped his curriculum, and he started breaking things down even further, being even more rigorous, adding even more drills, basically just taking everything he was already doing it and just like turning it up to 11, basically. But this made the results even worse. So what happened was these classes ended up just becoming so difficult now that most of the students couldn't even keep up. And you know how like at college at the end of the term, they always ask you to fill out like this kind of feedback form of all the classes and all the teachers so that they can improve the class. Well, they did that in Brown's case. And what happened was when he got the feedback from the students, at the end of the first term that he had his kind of revamped class, turns out he was the least popular teacher and his class was the most complained about. So what was one of the most devastating things for Brown was that, you know, there was a couple students in the class that actually were doing well, right? Most of the people couldn't even keep up, but there were a few students who actually could keep up. They got good grades. They were on top of everything. But even those those students still said that they hated him in their reviews. And so this left Brown feeling totally devastated and defeated. And he wrote in his autobiography, which is where most of this is coming from, that reading these student reviews was really the straw that broke the camel's back and just sent him to rock bottom. So he says in his autobiography that he literally cried himself to sleep that night and was pretty much just ready to give up on his goal of trying to help people reach native level in a foreign language. Now, it was actually the next day, apparently, that he had this turning point, which was when one of his colleagues handed him a copy of The Natural Approach by Stephen Krashen. So you probably already know if you've made it, you know, to this class here, but in case you don't, Stephen Krashen is pretty much the granddaddy of input learning. He's like the original OG that invented immersion learning. And in The Natural Approach, this is kind of Krashen's seminal text where he really lays out the input hypothesis and talks about how, you know, there's really one and only one way in which we acquire messages, which is getting input, you know, understanding messages. Now, you know, Brown had been trained as a linguist, so it wasn't like he didn't know about Krashen. He had heard about Krashen, but, you know, at this point, Krashen's ideas were still really new. He was kind of still on the fringe. And Brown was such a strong believer in the traditional method that he kind of had just ignored Krashen as like, oh, yeah, that guy exists, but that's just some weird stuff. I don't know, not worth paying attention to. But after reaching rock bottom and kind of just realizing he had to try something new because the way he was currently doing it just wasn't working, that kind of opened his mind up to new possibilities. And he kind of really read Krashen for the first time and really took it seriously. And this led him to have a huge epiphany. Basically, what he realized was that, contrary to what he had thought this whole time, the real reason that Brown got really good at Thai wasn't because of all that, you know, an analysis of grammar and vocab that he was doing. It was actually because almost every single day after work, he would go to a pub in Thailand and just listen to Thai people speak for hours and hours. And so he actually had gotten thousands of hours of Thai input. But this whole time, he had just discounted that as just leisure or something that wasn't really helping him, right? But once he read Krashen's theories, he realized, oh, he had it all backwards. It was actually all that input that was probably the biggest reason why he got as good at Thai as he did. And so after having this epiphany, he instantly became a really strong believer in Krashen's ideas. And he completely redesigned his class. He made an entirely new class from scratch based entirely on comprehensible input. Now, the interesting thing is that although Brown was now completely convinced of Krashen's theories, he actually completely disagreed on how to implement those theories into like a practical class or something like that. And basically the deal with this was that Krashen was ultimately a scholar who was working within academia, right? He was posting papers and publishing books and things like this. And already at the time, his ideas were really kind of out there, really unorthodox, right? This idea that you can just acquire a language unconsciously without even realizing that you're acquiring anything. And so he couldn't do anything too bold or too radical when it came to actually designing a new class. And so ultimately, his actual recommendations of how language classes should be designed were pretty conservative. So one example of this was that he actually said that the silent period, which is basically how long you should wait before you actually start speaking the language, like how long you should have of just getting input, he said it should be only about 10 hours. And then after that, he thought a portion of every class should be dedicated to actually doing speaking practice. So on the other hand, right, Brown had no interest in academia. He was just interested in the practical, right? He wanted to actually help people reach native level in foreign languages, and he didn't care about getting papers published or anything like that. So he really took the theories and, you know, expanded them out to the logical conclusion. And what this was to him was that if we acquire through input, then any class time spent on just having students practicing speaking and not listening is just a waste of time. That would be better dedicated to more input. And so in Brown's new class, he decided that the students were not going to speak the language at all. And his intuition was that the silent period should be at least multiple months, maybe even a year. So right off the bat, you could say that Brown's classes were actually kind of more Krashen than Krashen himself, right? He took the ideas and really put them to the logical extreme. So started off this new class, but unfortunately, right off the bat, it started off with a little bit of a bumpy start. And basically, the reason for this was that what these classes consisted of is Brown standing in front of the class and then speaking Thai. So this new class, it was specifically for teaching Thai to foreigners who wanted to learn the Thai language. So he was sitting there all on his own, he's just speaking Thai to the students. But the problem was it was really hard to make input that's both comprehensible and interesting for a complete beginner, right? This is kind of this inherent paradox that we still face today as immersion learners, right? Where if you're a beginner, right, something that's comprehensible generally has to be so simple that it's not going to be very interesting, right? It's going to look like something like a show meant for, infants or something like that, or something that's like artificially dumbed down. And so it's not very interesting. So we get bored out of our minds. We can't really pay attention to it. On the other hand, most of the things that are really interesting to us and we find genuinely compelling generally are so complicated that they're not comprehensible at all. So this is kind of this paradox. How do you make input that's both comprehensible and interesting when you're a beginner? So Brown really struggled with this paradox. He tried lots of different things, like, giving the students kind of instructions to follow. Like he would say to the class, like in Thai, like, okay, if the person standing next to you is a girl, then pat your head. If the guy standing next to you is a guy, then pat your stomach, and things like this, where, he was trying to like make it at least a little bit interactive and keep it simple. But what he found was most of those things just didn't work. The input just wasn't very comprehensible, and it especially wasn't very interesting. So he kept on with his new class. He was kind of struggling along, and he bumped into a solution from a kind of unexpected pathway, you could say. So one day, as he's giving these kind of bumpy classes, he started to get worried that because he wasn't a native Thai speaker, the students were going to get worried that they weren't hearing real Thai. So one day, pretty much just for kind of vanity reasons, he brought his Thai wife into class. So, he was married to a Thai woman who was a native Thai speaker. And he brought this wife to class and talked to her in Thai in front of the class, basically just to show off to the students. Like he wrote in his autobiography, he did this mostly because he wanted the students to realize that his Thai sounded exactly like the native speaker's Thai. But this thing that started off kind of just wanting to brag to his students about how good he was ended up actually being this huge breakthrough, because what he realized was that having a dialogue between two teachers or two native speakers tends to lend itself much more naturally to input that's both comprehensible and interesting, right? And so once he had this other epiphany, he redesigned his class to completely revolve around two native speakers interacting with each other. And what this allowed for was, using props, interacting with each other, doing skits, and he also started to have them interact with the students as well. So basically, when there's two people interacting with each other, there's just so much more possibilities that open up for creating interesting interactions, right? One person could be mad at the other person could be, beating up the other person. There's just way more that you can do that's both interesting and interesting and comprehensible. And then when you bring in the interaction to the students, it's even more so, right? But he made a rule where the students could only speak back to the teachers in English. So the teachers maybe would speak to some of the students in Thai and ask them to respond, but they would have to speak back in English because he was a really firm believer in early output being harmful. And actually, this wasn't the only rule he had. He had a lot of other strict rules he developed over the years, such as forbidding the students from asking questions about the language, like asking like, oh, why does the grammar like this and not this, right? No doing anything like that, no looking up words in the dictionary, and no doing any reading of any kind in the language. So to dive a little bit more into detail on his theory behind these really strict rules that he had, right? So to first of all, talk about reading. So Brown thought that, reading before you're fluent had many harmful effects on the language learning process. Now, I have also been kind of aware of this idea for many years now. I've talked about it, but I mostly thought of it in terms of pronunciation, right? So at this point, because I've talked about it, a lot of people know that if you do reading early on, then you have this voice in your head, and the voice at the beginning is going to be mispronouncing things, and that can become habits. And so you're going to mess up your pronunciation. But what Brown realized was actually the true biggest harmful aspect of reading goes way deeper than just pronunciation. And it has to do with the way that your brain processes the language. So the most detrimental thing about reading, according to Brown, is that when you read, you can go at your own pace. And this allows you to use your conscious mind to analyze the language. So, spoken language is so fast that there's just no way your conscious mind can keep up, right? With thinking about, okay, what are all the words I'm hearing? How is the grammar interacting? Like the second you start thinking about that, the thing you're listening to is already 3-4 sentences ahead. So you're basically forced to only rely on your unconscious mind's ability to intuitively process the language, right? Basically, you're forced to rely on the part of your brain that Stephen Krashen talked about we use to actually acquire the language through input, right? Instead of consciously trying to learn the language, right? And when you're reading, this isn't the case. You can go at your own pace, and you can actually use your conscious mind pretty effectively to kind of solve sentences as if they're kind of some kind of crossword puzzle or Sudoku puzzle or something like that. And the thing is, if you practice this over and over and over from doing lots of reading, then you eventually get faster and faster and faster. And you eventually get to the point where even when you hear spoken language, you can partially rely on your conscious mind to comprehend it. And once you do this, once you've done enough reading for this to happen, then this becomes basically impossible to reverse because you've built in the habit of using your conscious mind to process the language. And like Ken mentioned earlier on, right? Like when you see some text, you just immediately read it, right? You can't help yourself but read it. Same thing when you hear spoken language, right? When you hear spoken language, your brain processes it in whatever way you've trained your brain to process it. And it's a completely automatic, instantaneous process. So if through doing lots of reading, you've trained your brain to process the language using your conscious mind, maybe not even entirely, but maybe even partially, maybe even like 20 or 30% of the way that your brain processes language is due to, deeply internalized conscious processes. Well, now that you can't reverse that because it's just an automatic process, right? It's an automatic reaction. And like I'll talk about a little bit later, your conscious mind is just worse at processing the language than your unconscious mind. And so the degree to which you've internalized consciously processing the language, your results are just going to be worse when you eventually go on to speak the language. And so it's for this reason that Brown was very against learning through listening and insisted on, he was very against learning through reading, and he insisted on learning entirely through listening only. Now, of course, this probably goes without saying, but this isn't to say you can never learn how to read. It's basically just saying wait until you start learning how to read until you're already fluent in the spoken language, right? Because once you're fluent in the spoken language, you already have trained your brain to process the language completely using the parts of your brain that are dedicated to language acquisition. And so you're already safe, right? And this is what we all do with our native language, right? It sounds like a little bit radical at first because so many people in the community like praise reading as the ultimate language learning technique, basically. But the way we all learned our native language was we got completely fluent in the spoken language only through listening, and then we learned how to read. So of course, in the long run, we want to be literate, right? We don't want to just be illiterate forever. But what we're saying here, what Brown was saying, is that you want to basically imitate the same order of things as what we did as an infant, right? And when you think about it this way, like in combination with all the stuff Ken talked about how important the sequence of things are, the sequence of adding the ingredients. Well, if we want to be like a native speaker, maybe we should follow the same order that native speakers follow, right? It almost sounds obvious when you kind of put it that way, right? So that's reading. The other thing is he was also very against using dictionaries. So what he realized is that using dictionaries to look up words kind of interrupts the process of your unconscious mind naturally uncovering what the nuance of a word means over time. So, when you look up a word in the dictionary, right? Like, let's say you're learning Japanese and you just look up a Japanese word in the Japanese to English dictionary, you're kind of sending your brain this message that Japanese word A is equivalent to or equals English word B. When in reality, this is never the case, right? Any Japanese word is not going to be exactly the same as any English word. Even the closest translation is going to be at least a little bit different. So if you send your brain this message that A is equivalent to B, then you're liable to kind of almost forever interpret that word in a way that's biased by that English translation. Now, if it's really far off, then yeah, just by getting input, you'll eventually come across situations that kind of let you realize that your interpretation is incorrect and you'll get closer to the nuance. But when it comes to like really, really subtle distinctions, right, where there's two words, one in Japanese, one in English, they're almost the same, to the point where if you interpreted the Japanese word as always meaning the same thing as the English word, it would almost always make sense. It's almost impossible to kind of notice that you actually are slightly misinterpreting the word, right? And if you're slightly misinterpreting the meaning of the word, that's going to lead you to use the word in slightly unnatural ways yourself. So this is why he was really against using dictionaries that kind of implant these false ideas of what words mean in your head, and instead allow you to just slowly uncover what a word means through seeing it used in many different contexts, right? Completely separate from the native language that you have in your head. So that was kind of like a little detour talking about some of Brown's theory. Going back to kind of the story, once he introduced the idea of having two native speakers interacting with each other, and he introduced all these rules, and he kind of over the years kind of worked out all the kinks in the class, he eventually had this huge breakthrough, I guess you could say, where the classes became a huge success. So this new program eventually went on to be called the automatic language growth method, or the ALG method. And after running ALG for many years, Brown found that some of his students, like his kind of top star students, would surpass his own legendary level of Thai, and it would only take 4 years. So what this would look like would be basically 1 year of taking his classes, like 5 days a week, many hours, each day when they take the classes. And after just 1 year of classes, they just go and live in Thailand as a normal person. And after 3 years of living in Thailand, they would essentially become native speakers. So, it took Brown himself like a decade to reach his legendary level of Thai, probably because he was doing things like analyzing the grammar, things like this that kind of slowed him down. But when people would take this 100% comprehensible input approach, where really all they're doing is just getting comprehensible listening input, and that's it. They don't look things up. They don't learn any grammar. They do anything. They literally just learn like an infant. In just 4 years, they would reach native level. So in a way, they were actually learning faster than infants do, right? Which kind of makes sense because your brain is more developed and you're a lot smarter than an infant is, right? You have a knowledge of concepts about the world. But the really fascinating thing is that not all of his students got the same results. There was actually a lot of disparity. So some of the students would get amazing results, but some would not. And what he realized was that the students that ignored his rules and would either speak early on or use dictionaries or would read in the language, they would end up progressing much slower. And in the long term, they would end up speaking Thai with broken grammar pronunciation pretty much forever, right? So he was really strict about these rules, and he would try to, as much as he could to force people to follow the rules. But it was just so hard for people to just sit and get input and not muddle with the process. Because so many people, as adults, right, we have this idea that we need to do more. We need to work hard. We need to do all these things. And so most of the students would break the rules, and they would then get much worse results. So it was only the students that got amazing results were the ones that actually followed the rules, and to use Brown's words, would wait until they have a clear mental image of what the language is supposed to sound like, formed 100% through listening, before they started to speak. So the students that did that would go on to eventually basically become native speakers, right, in just a matter of years. So what's the takeaway here? So the ultimate conclusion that Brown came to is that we never lose the ability to become a native speaker in a new language, right? So this is actually something that Krashen believed, but Krashen's actual students never really got those results, right? But the key here is that we don't lose the ability to become a native speaker. Instead, as we become adults, we gain the ability to mess up the process by consciously analyzing the language, which in turn interferes with the natural language acquisition process. So we still have all the same hardware and software that we use as an infant to acquire a native language, and it still works just as well. The problem is now we have all this new hardware that's very tempting to use, and when you use it, it actually gives us worse results. So it's actually hard to just sit back, do less, and really just learn the way that an infant does. And Brown had this quote that ever since I read it, always really stuck in my mind, because I actually really resonated with it for my own Japanese, which is, when I speak Thai, I think in Thai. When I speak English, I think only in thought. I pay no attention to English. So I feel the same way. Like I'm very, very good at Japanese, right? Japanese people ask me all the time if I grew up in Japan or if I'm half Japanese or something. But speaking Japanese doesn't feel the same way as speaking English to me. It still has something a little bit artificial about the way that I speak it. It's like I have to, be a little bit more careful when I'm speaking, or just, it feels like I have to kind of put the sentences together in a way that just doesn't, I don't need to in English. And I think this is because I learned through reading, right? It also took me a really, really long time to like reach the level that I eventually did, right? It also took me like 10 years to get all the way here. I was pretty good after 3 years. I was really good after 5 years, but I wasn't close to native level, right? It took me many, many years. And, I'm still not perfect, right? So I think I'm in a really similar boat to Brown, where I both got a lot of input, but I also did harmful things. And I had to do a ton of hard work to try to overcome all all the damage I did through reading, basically. And I'm still not all the way there, right? It still doesn't feel completely natural. Whereas Brown's students would report that when they learned the right way through the classes and they followed the rules, speaking Thai would feel almost the same as speaking English, virtually the same. So the last kind of big takeaway here that I want you to keep in mind is that true language acquisition is an unconscious process. Your conscious mind isn't nearly as good at languages as your unconscious mind is. And so therefore, the more that you involve conscious thinking when learning a language, the worse results that you get. And again, when you involve your conscious mind through doing things like reading, and you get really good at reading early on before you've actually installed the language into your brain, then you condition your brain on a very deep habitual level to use your conscious mind whenever processing the language. And this is going to give you worse results, and it's almost impossible to change because, like I said, it's an automatic response, right? Once you've trained your brain to consciously process the language whenever you hear it, it's just like with reading, right? You can't just stop doing it. It's just something that happens before it even reaches consciousness, right? And so, yeah, final conclusion is that Brown's story made me realize that the reason immersion learners in our community, right, bringing it back to us now, right, aren't getting native-like results is because they're doing many things that harm the language learning process, in particular, reading and using dictionaries. So this brings us to the intact method. So Ken and I, over the last couple years, actually, have designed a brand new method for learning through input that allows you to actually become native level in Japanese, because it avoids all the pitfalls that the currently popular immersion learning methods do. So we call it the intact method because we designed it to keep your ability to naturally acquire language to a native level intact, right? Now, the method itself is pretty complicated. It has a lot of different parts. Like if you thought my old method was kind of complicated here, this is kind of even more complicated than that. So we don't have time to go into all the different details and teach the whole method right now. But I want to give you guys basically take all the components of the intact method and take the parts that are the most actionable and kind of plug and play and the easiest to implement, so that you can take some techniques from the intact method and go apply them, like starting right now after this presentation, starting today, and improve your Japanese learning. So got 3 techniques that I'm going to teach you today that are from the intact method. First one's called intact GPT. Second one's called interactive input. And then the final one are called comp boosts, or comprehension boosters. So first one, intact GPT. So like I said a little bit ago, the danger of using a Japanese to English dictionary is falsely equivocating that Japanese word A equals English word B. So, no word in Japanese is going to be 100% equivalent to a word in English. And so kind of sending them that false message to your brain is really dangerous, right? Once you internalize that, it can be really hard to kind of remove that from your brain. Now, this is traditionally why me and many other people in the community have been such a big fan of Japanese to Japanese dictionaries, right? When you have a Japanese to Japanese dictionary that is meant for native speakers, it doesn't actually translate anything. It just describes what a word actually means. So, in a way, I've been talking about this problem of using Japanese to English dictionaries for many, many years now, ever since I first started, right? That's why I always made the Japanese to Japanese or the monolingual transition really early and encourage other people to do so. The big problem with the monolingual transition or using Japanese dictionaries is that it requires you to read in Japanese. And so, well, this is why at the beginning, it's even if you want to use it, you can't. But the other thing is, especially now, we're talking about ideally you want to avoid reading because has all these negative effects. And so that also makes the monolingual transition almost even more problematic than just using the Japanese to English dictionary. So as a solution, you can use ChatGPT to generate what we might call monolingual definitions in English. So for example, if you were going to look up the word tomodachi in a Japanese to English dictionary, it would tell you that it means friend, right? Now, in reality, tomodachi and friend have slightly different nuances. So if you're going to associate these two words together and use the word tomodachi when you're speaking Japanese in the exact same way that you would use friend, that would result in there being certain specific situations in which you're going to say unnatural things in Japanese. Now, instead, you can actually use a prompt to ask ChatGPT to describe what the word tomodachi means without using an English translation. Now, there's a lot of different prompts you can use for this, but if you do this, you might get something like this, right? A person with whom one shares a bond typically characterized by affection, loyalty, and mutual respect. These relationships are often non-familial and can be formed through shared experiences, interests, or emotional connections. So you can see that this gives you a much more nuanced understanding of the word and also doesn't falsely associate the word tomodachi with anything in English. So if you're going to learn what the word tomodachi means through this ChatGPT explanation, that'd be a lot better and a lot less harmful than using a dictionary. So starting today, you can go and make a free account at openai.com or whatever, and start using this instead whenever you're looking up a word, and that will help you learn words a lot better. And even if you don't want to do this for every single lookup, like you don't have to be all or nothing, right? You can, if you are a little bit more lazy or something, but you still want to get some of the benefit, you could still, in the middle of your input, look up words in the Japanese English dictionary, but then on your cards, use these types of definitions instead of the Japanese to English definition. That would still give you a lot more benefit. Because with your cards, you see them over and over and over, and it really can like burn definitions into your brain. So that's when it's extra dangerous to use Japanese to English definitions. So the next technique we have is interactive input. So this is something that also has kind of been for a long time overlooked by the community, in my opinion, including me in the past. And this is that interacting with native speakers is pretty much the best way to get high quality language input, right? So first of all, interacting with people in real time is inherently engaging. This is why people like streaming so much, like watching streamers, right? Like it's a lot more fun to watch a streamer stream in real time than to watch the recording of the stream, watch the VOD or whatever, right?
That's why this is better, right?
Well, yeah, exactly. This is part of the reason why we wanted to actually do this as a live class, because it's inherently way more engaging, right? It's more likely you're actually going to show up. And for whatever reason, it's kind of just a psychological quirk, right? It should be the same as watching a video, but it's not, because probably for all of our evolution, the recording video wasn't a thing, right? We're used to doing things in real time. So it's just inherently more interesting and more engaging. Additionally, it's generally going to be very comprehensible because the native speaker will be able to gauge your level in real time and repeat themselves when necessary or just adjust their level of speech to match you. And so it ends up being, in a way, it's a way to solve this paradox of how do you get input that's both comprehensible and also engaging, right? But of course, at the same time, we want to avoid early output, because when you do early output before you've really acquired the language, what that really means, right? Using this new frame that we have, we could say the reason why early output is so harmful. Of course, there's the aspect of you're going to make mistakes, and those mistakes will become habits. But there's also the aspect where your only choice, when you're trying to output before you've acquired the language, your only choice is to think in English and then use your conscious mind to translate. And again, the more that you're involving your conscious mind is a lot worse at language than your unconscious language acquisition device. And so turning conscious thinking about the language into habits itself is the most harmful thing you can do for your long-term language ability. So basically, how do we put these two things together, right? We want to talk to native speakers, get really high quality input. We don't want to output. Well, kind of simple solution, right? One of the things you can do is have a native speaker speak to you in Japanese, and then you speak back in English, right? This is actually what J. Marvin Brown was doing in ALG. And this is not a new idea at all, right? This is pretty well known in the current language learning community. People call it crosstalk. But the thing is, most people kind of just keep it at having conversations with a native speaker, and they don't really take it any further than that. So, that's still really good, right? You can have a crosstalk conversation with a language partner or a language tutor, and that will be good. But ultimately, it's still going to be kind of boring. It's going to get stale pretty soon when you're just sitting and having conversations, right? So by playing interactive games with native speakers, you can make things a lot more engaging and exciting. So one example of a game that we've been doing with our students up until now is called Listen and Locate. And Ken actually has more experience with this than me, so I'll turn over to him for a second so he can explain.
Yeah, okay. Excuse my throat. Yeah, so listen, there's like you said, there's several of these, but one of the ones that I thought was really fun, I used to work with private students a lot in person. And so one of the things we do is we'd meet in a restaurant or a cafe or sometimes a bar. That's how I like to do my private lessons. But anyway, we'd go there and I would obviously only speak Japanese. Sometimes I'd have native speakers with me as well, but either way. And then the student would only speak in English, right? So we still have that element of crosstalk where they're not using Japanese prematurely, and they're getting input from me and other native speakers. But what we do is we would sometimes, this is the listen and locate one is like a guessing game. So me and the native speaker would pick something in the room. Maybe it's a chair, a poster, maybe it's a person, right? And the student would have to guess, and then we're going to talk about it. So I'm going to talk about it with my native speaker, and then we'll talk about that thing. The more we talk it more and more, and the student has to guess what it is. And the longer they take, the more specific we'll make it, right? So first we'll be like, yeah, that's really nice. It's really pretty. Say it's a poster. That's very vague, right? But the more they can't get it, the more we'll go specific. But the cool thing that I like to do is make it really fun. So like, say we pick some dude, right? Maybe he's like some guy that, I don't know, didn't look like he paid his taxes last year, whatever that looks like. And so we'd say that. We'd be like, oh yeah, it looks like he didn't pay his taxes. And the student would be like, what? So maybe the student didn't know the word for tax, right? But maybe they did. And then we'd rephrase it. We'd be like, yeah, I wonder why. I mean, he has got a lot of back taxes. Maybe the government's mad at him. And we talk around that subject of him not paying his taxes. And maybe they knew the word government, but they didn't know the word tax. Or maybe they knew the word, oh yeah, well, America is going to be mad at him. Or like, he's going to run out of money. We talk about this. And then there's the higher, because we're contextually giving the student clues, they're able to, gain that kind of understanding of what the word might mean. They're learning from context without giving a direct translation of the word taxes, even if they didn't know what it was. So that's one way it works on a micro level. But in general, it's just really fun because we just do that, in public. We talk about people, and since we're speaking Japanese, he didn't know. Probably should pay his taxes anyway. Or we'll trick him, and it'll be what the student's wearing. Maybe the student's wearing like a blue shirt, and then I'll make that the item or whatever. But anyway, so the point is to have this fun little game where we're having fun, where whatever makes you laugh, whatever makes you smile. If it's in a real environment, it's easy to kind of imagine. But the thing is with this is that you don't actually have to do this in a real environment. So Matt, did you want to talk about this, or am I going to talk about this?
I mean, yeah, you can talk about it.
Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, I love to do it in a real environment just because there's more cool, fun things that we can do. But you can do it online really easily by using, actually, this was Matt's idea. You could use pictures of different things, right? So like one of them, what was one of the things? Oh, did you use ChatGPT?
Oh yeah, I used ChatGPT to generate images, like 5 images.
And they were like bonker. The images were nuts. It was really cool. You know how, I mean, it's very imaginative, right?
Should have put one in the presentation.
We should have put one in the presentation, but they're really cool. But you have it make 3 images and then, or maybe 5 or 4 images, and then have the student, the native speaker picks one and then starts talking about one, and the student can guess it as time goes by. So this is just one type of interactive input, one of the easier ones to understand, but there's actually a lot.
Yeah, so yeah, that's one really good example. Thanks, Ken. Of
course.
And yeah, we've been coming up with more and more of these types of games, as many as we can find as possible, so that you can kind of have this whole repertoire of things that you can do with a native speaker to get interactive input. That's really high quality input.
But this one is like the cool thing, and like you can anyone can do this now, like on what, I don't know, italki or something.
Yeah, I'm
sorry, I just took away your slide. Go ahead.
Yeah, you can do this with a Japanese friend, but we recommend, especially at the beginning, trying to do it with an italki tutor or just some other kind of tutor, just because that way you don't have to put strain on your relationships, right? You don't have to worry about being greedy or making your friend do like free labor. You can, if you pay italki tutor, it's pretty cheap. It can be, as cheap as like $5-10 an hour,
Yeah.
So then you can just be as greedy as you want, tell the native speaker to do exactly what you want, and not have to feel guilty about it or anything like that, or worry that you're
That's how I treat my italki teachers.
Yeah.
Not guilty at all. Do it. They're my slaves, basically. I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
No comment. Okay. Now, one other point that I wanted to talk about why interactive input is so powerful, and also one of the things that I think, again, has been missing from the immersion learning community up until now. Also, partially I'm guilty, like I said. I feel a little responsible for this because I also underestimated the power of this for too long. But by interacting with native speakers, you get the social parts of your brain involved in the language learning process. And this allows you to acquire a lot more than you would by simply watching videos, right? This is also, I think, part of why Brown's method works so well, is that his classes were all done in person, right? It was 100% in real time, in person, the direct interaction between the teachers and the students, and there wasn't just watching videos on a screen. Now, something that's really interesting, I don't think it's 100% relevant to adults, definitely not, but there's something that Ken was actually telling me recently about the video deficit, which is when infants, when you show them videos of comprehensible input, they don't learn at all, or at least nearly not as much as they would when they get the same exact input from a real live adult.
So it's
right?
really bizarre, right? It happens up until about 3 years old.
Yeah, so you would think like, whoa, what's the difference between watching it on a screen versus watching it in real life? It's the exact same content. Well, for whatever reason, up until 3 years old, you learn way better from a real person, right?
And I mean, they've done tests where it's like literally the same lesson. Like I think you've seen the videos where there's like a Chinese lady trying to teach the baby Chinese in person, and then she does the exact same routine on a video, and the baby doesn't, take anything away from it.
There's a TED talk about it. You can go and search up probably pretty easily later.
Right.
But so obviously this isn't 100% true for adults because, both of us mainly learn through watching anime, which is recorded.
And hopefully most of you are past the age of 3.
Yeah. But I still think there's something there, right? Where there's still something you get in a real life interaction that you don't get in a video. And I think it has to do with the social parts of your brain being involved. So like if you're just watching a video, you're not really participating in that interaction, right? But when you're having an actual interaction with the native speaker, now your social kind of identity is on the line, right? If you do something weird that has social consequences, and obviously as social beings, right, who are involved in an environment where if we're kind of kicked, we're not liked by our tribe, we get kicked out and died, right? So now there's like survival parts of your brain, social parts of your brain that are now also getting motivated to acquire the language and sound as much like a native speaker as possible because you don't want to get kicked out of that tribe, right? You're kind of taking advantage of this old conditioning. And so that's why I think you get this additional benefit from actually interacting with native speakers as well. So that's why from pretty early on, I think you actually want to be interacting with native speakers. Just make sure you're doing it in a safe way where you're not going to harm yourself by doing early output, basically. So that's interactive input. The final technique are comp boosts, also known as comprehension boosters. So to kind of frame this one a little bit, language acquisition boils down to comprehending input in the language, right? Now, if you can find input that's perfectly comprehensible right out of the box, that's great, right? Like if only we could just go to Thailand and learn Thai from J. Marvin Brown's classes, that'd be perfect, right? Unfortunately,
he's also dead, right?
Well, yeah, he's also dead. And I mean, a little side note here: his program, the ALG program, was continued after his death. But the thing is, from what I've heard, I've actually talked to some people who've gone to Thailand and have taken the ALG classes. Seems like the quality has kind of degraded over time after J. Marvin Brown passed away. It's like everything, right? Like Apple after Steve Jobs,
I was just gonna say that.
Like it never can without the actual genius that created it, it always kind of falls apart. And so now it seems like they're not as strict on following the rules, and they it's closer to traditional classroom because they have to do that. It's such a hard sell to sell pure comprehensible input, right? So to kind of keep the lights on, they've had to kind of capitulate to normal people's expectations and things like that. So unfortunately, it doesn't really exist in the original form anymore. So even if you want to learn Thai and you have enough money to go to Thailand or whatever, you still don't have this luxury of having perfect comprehensible input, right? Not to mention that most of us here are learning Japanese, and it never existed for Japanese. Actually, I think they might have had like a Japanese program at the ALG school for like a little bit, but anyway, I don't think it exists anymore. So what are we left to do? We don't have this luxury of having perfect input. Well, we can generate some of our own really high quality input with interactive input, right? That's what we were just talking about. But realistically, it's going to be hard to generate enough interactive input for that to be enough to learn the entire language just by that, right? You'd have to be spending a lot of time and money on talking to italki teachers. It's not really realistic, right? So what do we do to solve this problem? Well, solution is to take input that is compelling, but isn't entirely comprehensible, and use some kind of tool or method to boost your comprehension, right? It's a lot easier to boost comprehension than to boost your own interest in something, right? If you don't find something interesting, I mean, maybe you could try to get really drunk and find it more interesting there or something, but it's not really sustainable. So better to try to boost your
That's the
comprehension.
Japanese salaryman way.
Yeah. And so in the INTAC method, we call these methods for boosting your comprehension comp boosts. And today I'm going to specifically talk about one of the ones that's been more popular with our students, which is the manga tutor. And this is actually a technique that Ken came up with many years ago. So basically, the way that this works is you find a manga that also has an anime adaptation, and you read a few chapters of the manga in English. So you're reading the English translation of the manga. And then right afterwards, you go and watch the corresponding episodes of the anime in Japanese, and you watch it in Japanese with no subtitles at all, not even Japanese subtitles. So the idea here is that the manga chapters shouldn't take long to read, especially because it's in English, right? You're assuming that you're completely fluent in English. It will only take you a couple minutes of reading manga in order to kind of unlock one full episode of anime's worth of content. And what happens here is that when you watch the anime episode, you'll already know what's being said because you just read all the content in the manga, and so it'll be comprehensible. But the key here is that by the time you watch the anime episode in Japanese, you'll already have forgotten the exact words of the English translation, right? You'll only really remember the general meaning or be remembering the gist. And this is actually exactly what you want because it allows you to comprehend the original Japanese without making false associations between the English translation and the Japanese original, right? So, we just talked about in the context of dictionaries, right? You want to avoid making these false associations between English and Japanese. And so if you were just going to watch a Japanese anime and read the subtitles and really try to compare in real time the exact English translation and the subtitles to the Japanese audio, that could potentially that could be harmful, right? You could make false associations. But because in this context, you're actually going to forget the exact translation, only remember the meaning, only remember the gist, it's really perfect because now you just have the meaning and then the Japanese. So it basically is just comprehensible input. And if you want to implement this, then an easy way to do it is most popular animes and manga have fan wikis that come up as one of the top Google searches when you search for a series. And if you go to this fan wiki, it will actually tell you which manga chapters correspond to which episodes of the anime. And this makes it really straightforward. So this is one of the best things you can do to create comprehensible input. Just go read a manga chapter or two and then go watch the corresponding anime. And you don't need to use subtitles. You don't need to look anything up. It's a kind of really straightforward, easy technique to get comprehensible input. So those were top 3 INTAC techniques here. We got the INTAC GPT, using ChatGPT to create English monolingual definitions. Then interactive input, use native speakers to get really high quality input, get your social brain involved, but get creative with it so you're not just having boring conversations. And then comp boosts. And there's other versions of comp boosts too, besides just the manga tutor. There's also the anime tutor, which is when you kind of do the same thing, but just with anime, where you can watch it first with English subtitles and then without later. So you can get creative with that too. So
there we go. Wow, awesome. I really like these 3 techniques is because they're practical, you can do them right now. You don't need anybody to help you with these. INTAC GPT is really cool. You can use it right now. You can go on italki right now. If you got a friend, you can torture them with it. Or Comp Boost, there's several of them, but the manga teacher, the manga tutor one is probably is the easiest. It's got the best. Like you just said, subtitle tutor is very similar, but it's a little bit more tedious. So
yeah.
But anyway, awesome stuff. And also the cool thing, it's kind of this is the whole idea, is that it makes learning Japanese easier, so simpler, right? How easy it is to read manga and watch anime. It's okay, you're working real hard there. You're not doing a bunch of Anki reps, which we didn't talk about if that's bad or not. We didn't mention that was bad, but you're not doing a lot of work. You're not, even if you're doing traditional method, you're not reading a textbook. You're not doing drills. You're not, anything that's difficult, really. It's not very hard to watch anime or manga, but you still need to put in the hours, right? It's not like you get to do it for 1 hour and you're fluent. You still got to put in hundreds and thousands of hours, regardless of what method you use. So this is a perfect example of it's not faster, because nothing's faster, but it will be simpler. So that's what our goal is, to make it easier. Okay, so what we've just what? Oh, okay, the slides are like, okay. There's like a okay.
I can.
So, oh, thank you. Oh yeah, that view is easier for me. But anyway, all that stuff is basically the exact methods, the exact techniques from this quote unquote thing called the intact method, which is the fastest and easiest way to become fluent in Japanese that we know of, right? Maybe there's some other things out there, but we've been doing this for a while. And it's not just fluent where like, you sound native to other people, which is really good. Most people don't actually get to that level either. But it's also to the point where you're going to feel like it's your first language. And that's like one of the big things that we've been, focusing on, because that's like the next level. And it's kind of uncomfortable when, you're struggling to speak, even though you might be putting on a good show. So that's kind of the difference there. Because it should be possible, right? If you're an infant, it feels really natural. But why does it happen? What happens? And so when you're older, and that's kind of what we talked about. But if you'd like help to implement everything we've gone over plus a lot more, we would love to. And here's how we do it. We've created a class called the Fluency Incubator. Pretty cool class. It's been running for about, 6 months? I think it might be
Yeah.
7 months now.
Yeah.
So yeah, 7 months we've been doing this class called the Fluency Incubator. There's a lot of questions actually about like, what are you guys doing for jobs? And I was like, Edgar was telling me, don't tell him yet. I was like, so this is what we've been doing for jobs. We've been teaching this class. And the students really like it so far, so that's great. But the whole thing about it is basically this class is specifically designed to walk you through the entire Japanese acquisition process. So this is from start to finish, beginner to fluent. It doesn't really matter if you're a beginner or not, or if you're halfway through. We're gonna hold your hand and we do it live. So kind of like we're doing right now, we're live. Obviously, it's a little bit more interactive, well, quite a bit more interactive because we have a lot of people on here right now. It's a little hard to be interactive with all these people. But we're holding your hand live. It's pretty much designed to replicate our success of learning fluent Japanese in under 2 years. So basically to guarantee that you get to fluency. So we're also going to stick with you the whole time that you're learning Japanese, whether that's 2 years, 5 years, 6 months, whatever you want, however long it takes you, to the point that you can live in Japan and understand all Japanese media. And God is that great. The amount that knowing fluent Japanese has like changed the entire direction of mine and Matt's life is just like incredible. What would you be doing if you didn't learn? That's crazy. Like everything we do, all of our friends, everything we consume, what we speak every day, like where we live, and the hobbies that I have are just completely different. So like we've both been here for like I'm at like a total of 3 years. I think you're about like maybe you've passed the 2-year mark if you count the earlier.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But anyway, I have not gotten over that honeymoon phase. I think you said you did though, right?
I've had like 3 different honeymoon phases.
What's
They keep
honeymoon
they keep
phase?
coming in cycles.
So, okay, so you ebb and flow a little bit, but for me, it's just been crazy, like constant. Like I feel like I'm Disneyland every time I leave my house. Like even if I'm going to the kombini, like that's like 5 seconds away. I don't realize when I'm in my house because it's like houses all look the same mostly. When I leave, it's oh whoa whoa whoa, what is this? Where am I? I'm in Japan. Oh my God, look at all these weird okashis and candies and gums and food stuffs, and it's so tasty. But anyway. I'm always surprised when I go out there. So, I mean, the buildings are different outside, the foods, the places, the culture, and the people are especially different. So, like, that's why I like to make like friends here more than I like in America, just because it's a different thing, right? So, the whole like Kyotsuka culture, which how would you translate that?
Being mindful of the people around you.
Kyotsuka. Yeah, so they have that. Japanese people are very much like that. They've got this kuki KY thing, right?
Yeah.
Where if you don't kuki or yomu, then you're what's that?
Read the atmosphere.
Reading the
Read the
atmosphere,
room.
reading the room. Also things like the boke and tsukomi culture, like from Japanese comedy. How can you translate that?
It's impossible.
I think it's like straight man and
the
stupid man. I don't know. What's the other one? I don't remember. I think we used to have that kind of comedy, but
yeah,
gone.
like vaudeville, whatever.
Right. Or like the Three Stooges like era. I don't know
Mm.
if you've ever seen them. Anyway, but like all that stuff doesn't exist in America, so it's just fun. It's just a new experience, so it's really fun to interact with people here. But anyway, you don't have to live in Japan. The 20 years that I spent in America knowing fluent Japanese was also incredible. The amount of untranslated media I consumed, like a Kirby monster, just sucking it up. It's just like so tasty. Loved it. Video games, anime, manga, drama, freaking visual novels, regular novels. Like it's just a bottomless pit, especially with untranslated stuff, and it's way better when it's not translated. I used to compare it to be like I used to use the analogy of like playing a video game with like a controller versus going like full on VR headset, but like Sword Art Online style, where you're like literally in the environment. So there's a huge difference to when you actually speak the language. So it's really fun. Definitely recommend learn Japanese. But that's just, sorry, that's just me gushing about Japan. I could do that all day. But, if that sounds good to you, well, this is specifically for you. So here's how we're doing it. Twice, oh, here we go, Fluency Bear. I hold my slides. Twice a month, we connect live as a little small intimate group where we'll work with everybody individually on exactly what you need to achieve that complete fluency. So we're working with you live, right? We're able to hear your worries, your fears, your problems, frustrations, what you're dealing with, and adjust our instruction and to kind of personalize it for your unique situation, your skill level and your goals. So this is, because we're actually, it's not just chat like we're doing here. It's also, we get to talk to you like live. And, if you so desire, there's cameras and whatnot. You can get up on the camera. But either way, it's much more personalized. You'll also get to stay connected with us constantly through this separate little Fluency Incubator website. You're going to have access to that 24/7. Obviously, this is a place where we'll be giving you weekly missions. We're going to talk about that in a second. We're also going to be logging something called your sangas. We'll also explain that in a second. So these are cool new things that we do. It's also, we're going to upload stuff on that website, obviously. All the recordings you get to keep forever, by the way. Watch it at your leisure. So in case you miss any of the live sessions. In addition to that, this is we're also going to stay in touch via these special emails that we secretly named Fluency Sutras. It sounds cooler than here's an email. No, honestly, they're going to like include all the personalized instructions that we talked about during the lives and stuff, also entailing the weekly missions as well on the sanghas. And then we're going to add much more stuff throughout the months, including bonus podcasts, PDFs, much more. This is in addition to the regular instruction and group sessions and the missions and the sanghas and the emails that you're getting. Now, I want to talk a little bit about what the live sessions actually are, what they're split up into, how we like do this. The first thing we do is something called a dharma, the dharma. This is a word, it just simply means the truth, right, Matt?
Yeah.
Okay, so he's more in tune with this world than I am. But anyway, this section is actually very similar to what we did today. So, the whole Marvin Brown story and the takeaway about the dangers of reading and dictionaries coupled with the 3 new techniques like of learning Japanese that we talked about. That's what we're going to do like every time in these things. So basically, if you like the Dharma today, if you like the instruction, the class today, it's kind of what we're doing for this first segment. Something very similar. We come up with something new every time. And every time it's going to be a new aspect or a new method about Japanese that will specifically help you learn it faster and easier. It's also where we teach you where we learn how to learn, but it's also where we'll learn a lot about Japanese language as well. Next section, we got that Sangha. So this means community, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This section is where things get a lot more personalized. We're going to go around the group and we do one-on-one stuff. So for example, we'll generally keep track of all the input hours that you're doing, all the progress that you make throughout the week. This is to keep you like laser focused on the goal of fluency, keep you accountable, make sure you're reaching your goals. And then we'll also ask you about any specific challenges or issues that you're having that week. Getting enough input, finding content, understanding certain aspects of the language so that the entire language acquisition process goes as smooth as possible. And to make sure you're having fun with it, right? Like, that's another reason why we're here, to make sure that none of this is painful, to make sure that you're enjoying what you're doing, because like, even though learning a language might take a long time, the time should fly by because you're having so much fun. That's like the way it should be. So if you're struggling, that's not good. We want you to have fun. And speaking of fun, next part is missions. Missions are basically fun, kind of unique objectives or quests that we're going to ask you to complete during the week. So most of the times they're things that you wouldn't expect, but every time they're going to help you like improve a certain aspect of your Japanese ability. So generally we'll go through like a bunch of different one of these, but one example we just did a couple weeks ago, it was we had students rank the quality of the input at the same time as when they're watching their input source. So from a scale from 1 to 10, and we gave each student like a sheet that has several different quality factors to rank by. So for example, how comprehensible was it? How engaging was it? How dense, what was the density of the material that you were consuming, et cetera, et cetera. And this was really great because in the next live session, we were able to like go through the findings of the students with them, and there was like an unbelievable amount of things that were under the cover, so to speak. Like most people never take a look at this stuff, like in this much detail. So it's kind of like counting calories for the first time. Like if you want to lose some weight, which I'm trying to do right now, if you've never counted the calories, you might think, I don't need to, I don't eat that much. But like when you finally count calories, you're like, holy shit, I had no idea that a ham and cheese sandwich was like 7,000 calories. Or maybe that's just me, but anyway, you'll be surprised, right? The same thing with this input. Students were like, wow, I didn't realize the show I was watching was so low in density. Or I didn't realize the show was so incomprehensible, which is slowing my progress. So anyway, the devil's in the details there. Not all input is created equal. So there's a very clear set of factors that contribute to like high quality input. And if you know what they are, you'll learn faster and it's easy, right? So even Matt and I learned a lot during this segment. We're like, wow, we had no idea the students were inputting with this. That's having like this huge impact. So we really loved it, right? It was really fun to do that with the students. And because there's so many invaluable insights that we learn as well, it's kind of like different every time. And we're having a blast with it. So the students, while they're figuring it out, and that's I think most important. So there's all that, but in addition, we're going to be adding different segments all the time. We rotate things in like regular Q&As, different deep reflective exercises. We call these koans. I chose not to explain what koans are because they're very difficult to understand, but they're super cool. We do interactive input time, right? We just talked about today. We also play games together in Japanese, like Marvin Brown style. So it's great because we're always like having fun when we're making sure that we're learning at the same time, getting closer to that goal. So as you can see, this is why we created this Fluency Incubator thing, to make sure that you get to sounding fluent, to make sure that you have a little bit of guarantee that you get there, because we're there to protect you from any distractions or obstacles or that like will get in your way. Kind of just a matter of time. Now I want to be stupidly clear. You can totally learn all of Japanese by yourself. Lots of people do it. And there's going to be confusion and pain and struggle and hardship, but that's just how it goes when you venture out by yourself. Or you can let us walk you through it all, because we've been through it all before. For an over like combined 21 years, we've been helping thousands of different people do the exact same thing. So that's why we created the Fluency Incubator, so you can have somebody to lean on through them battles when you're actually going through the battles, like real time. Live, we're going to be there, so we'll show you the shortcuts while we're actually walking down the path, like not before you go, not after you already did it. So we're going to train you the best way that we know how, all in order to turn you into somebody who speaks fluent Japanese, period. So you too can do the things that we do now. You can live in Japan if you want to. You could talk to Japanese friends, consume all your favorite media and translate it, and so you can like feel proud that you did it. Japanese is hard to learn. Kind of want to give you that feeling of pride, because as weird as that sounds. Now, what a lot of people believe is the best method to learn Japanese is to go study abroad, right? You've probably heard this. This is seen as like the golden standard. However, most immersion-based learners, most input-based learners know, you probably know this isn't true if you've been learning through input and immersion. Matt actually did this twice himself. Twice. Why would you do twice? The first time when he was like 15 years old, right? Which most people think, okay, it's easy to learn Japanese when you're younger, right? But he actually ended up coming back like 4 months earlier because of how bad it was, apparently, and how little Japanese you learned. How was it when you went there, man?
I mean, yeah, if you've seen my 3-hour video,
Right.
if it's a 3-hour video, then you've heard me talk about this in detail.
Right.
But I mean, yeah, I had an absolutely awful time. I mean, I didn't speak Japanese yet, but they just threw me in a Japanese high school where all the classes were in Japanese. So I had to take math and physics and chemistry all in Japanese. So of course I understood nothing, and nothing was comprehensible at all. And I did make a
Was
lot.
it engaging?
Not at all.
It's physics, right?
I was literally like losing my mind out of boredom. And I did make a lot of progress in Japanese, but that was because I started skipping class and going to the library and just doing my own input, like on my phone, like watching anime and reading light novels and stuff.
Wow.
So
Talk about homatsu tento. But like for me, the worst part about that is how much it costs. When you told me, I was like, what the hell? How much was it?
like I mean, at least $10,000.
That's
right?
ridiculous.
My parents took it out or allowed me to take it out of my college fund.
Oh, though, how
Which,
nice of
at the
them.
time, I didn't care at all. I was like, I just need to go to Japan while I'm in high school so I can, live my anime life. But
Right. I mean, God, especially when you don't, I mean, it's $10,000 if it's worth it, but like you hated it apparently. And like maybe if you already spoke Japanese, like if you're fluent, it might have been good, but then what's the point? You
I
know?
mean, yeah.
So, okay. And then like you also did another one, right? Relatively, oh, here, this is the price I have on the screen. I gotta slow on my slide clicking. Okay. You also did another one, right? So this was for visa reasons. You actually did it recently, because you'd already been fluent for like over a decade now. This was in college. So how was this one?
A lot more fun.
Oh, good.
Mostly because I
Good.
was already fluent in Japanese.
Of course.
This was
There we
just,
go.
yeah, this was just last year. So when I first came to Japan, I came
Yeah.
on a student visa. And yeah, I had a good time, but I saw all the other kids who mostly had a good time, but generally didn't learn very much Japanese.
Right, yeah. And so you were able to see like how they taught it in
Yeah,
the
actually,
classes.
I had to take a Japanese class. I mean,
Oh.
there was like they had 8 different levels,
Uh-huh.
and there was a placement test. So obviously, I placed into the highest level. But
Mhm.
even then, it was, I mean, they literally used the Genki textbook.
Wow,
Actually,
really? In Japan too?
actually, in fact, some of the teachers at that school like authored the Genki textbook.
Oh
Apparently.
shit, no
So
way.
yeah, the
their
school that I
fault.
went to. But yeah, I mean, I saw these kids. Actually, it was kind of the funny part was the best students, like quote unquote, would stay in on the weekends and be studying really hard for test because it was actually a pretty intensive program.
Yeah.
So they had you had to learn X many vocab words every week, and so the ones who wanted to do well in school, and some of them had to do well because if they didn't get like perfect grades, they lose their scholarship or whatever, they would be sitting at home studying on the weekends. And then ultimately, all they did was memorize a bunch of words and grammar, and they couldn't speak Japanese. And the kids who actually were like quote unquote bad students and would just go out and kind of party with Japanese people on the weekends, go into the city, they actually learned a lot more.
This is like straight up Marvin Brown.
Yeah.
The lesson from Marvin Brown. Wow. Yeah. Okay, so I'm almost scared to ask, but actually wait. Yeah, see, I'm slow on my slides. Thank you, slides, for telling me that. I will ask Matt, how it was. I already did that. Okay, so here's the worst part. How much was that?
Just for the tuition, it was like $16,000.
Wow. So even more than the 10 grand. At least
Yeah.
you had fun this time.
I mean, I was supposed to get college credit for it.
Did you get it?
Technically,
Okay.
but I
That's
don't,
good.
I was only doing it for the visa. I don't really care about college, so it was.
Okay. Well, yeah, there's more benefit there, right?
But still, and then in addition to that, there was like the dorms, which were like outrageously overpriced, and
Right.
you know,
Right.
all these other
So
random.
this is not
fees.
including flight and board, right?
Yeah, not including that. Yeah, you had to get
16
that on your
grand.
own. Yeah.
Yeah, so there we go. I'm so slow with this stuff. But anyway, there we go. Oh, look, this I wrote this as a note for myself too. I've actually, when I looked it up, the most expensive one was like 50 grand. And you were like, what the hell? I don't believe that. But we saw the website, right?
Yeah, I mean, probably if you go to like one of the best schools, like the school I was going to was kind of mid-tier. It wasn't bad. It wasn't good. If you go to like Waseda or something, then yeah, maybe.
Or maybe like Todai or something.
Yeah, it's like.
Yeah. So I mean, that's ridiculous. The good news is that Fluency Incubator won't cost anywhere near $16,000. But in terms of effectiveness, it's probably safe to say it's way better. So here we go. We plan to release this program publicly on YouTube, which we haven't gone to YouTube in a while. For $2,964 for the year. So obviously this is going to require your whole attention for the whole year, at the very least, right? And the members will be our main focus for this next year. But it gets better, because if you enroll on this presentation right now, then we're going to cut that price 41% off for you. So that's going to make it a measly like $147 per month. Or you can actually, save even more money if you want to by choosing the annual plan, which is like well over half off. So the reason we're doing that is because, most of you are on our newsletter. There's some people that came in through Twitter. But we appreciate that you subscribed to the newsletter, even though it's been a while since you probably subscribed on the newsletter. But it's super cool that you showed up on our super cool class. Thank you very much for showing up. But here's the more important part is like you've actually listened to the whole thing now. I don't know if you've realized. Surprisingly enough, majority of people, they don't follow through on anything. So they wouldn't make it this far, right? And that's exactly who we want in this Fluency Incubator group. So we're going to be working very close together. We want to make sure that we're working with people that are willing to go for it, people that are going to take our instruction. Otherwise, there's like no point in us working together. So that's why we're doing that. Price is only valid during this presentation. So after that, we're going to raise it back up. So here's what we want you to do. Go to here. This is projectuproot.gp/incubator. Edgar, could you also I think Edgar can post a link in the chat. Tell me, are you still there, Edgar? Or did you just fall asleep?
I'm here. I'm here. Yeah, I posted the link.
Okay, but I'm just kidding. Yeah, no, tell me if you can't post it. Sometimes it doesn't work, so go ahead and try and post it in the chat. Anyway, it's on the screen there too. So once you go there, then, oh, it works. Okay, good. It might not be clickable, but
I think, do you need the HTTP? I think he posted it without the HTTP slash.
can you try to put it with the HTTPS / blah, blah, blah? Just like copy and paste it from the website, Edgar. That might be easier. Might make it clickable. But while he's doing that, let's see here. There's a payment plan on the website, right? Whichever one you want. You can do the monthly or the annual, doesn't matter. And then you're going to get some login info. You'll get a username, password sent to your email address, and we'll give you immediate access to the Fluency Incubator website. You'll be receiving an email after that asking you for your best times of the week and what day works for you to best attend the live sessions. So after we're gonna, after that, we'll gather results in probably within 48 hours, maybe 24 hours, depends on how fast we work. We'll schedule our first live session together. So that doesn't mean that we're gonna do our first live session within 24 hours. It just means that I'm gonna email you back within 24 hours because we have to look at the survey results and see, what the best times are for you. And, if you want to be taught by us personally, live, turning you into the ultimate proteges, if you want peace of mind, knowing that you'll never have to worry or struggle about anything Japanese related, we got you covered for the entire time that you're learning Japanese. Oh, I'm still on my slides again. What do you know? And if you want, some certainty, a guarantee that you will become native level Japanese, then, the Fluency Incubator is for you. So go ahead, take a look at the link on the screen and, let's go ahead and get started working together. It still gets a little better though. So if you join while you're still on this presentation, we also want to throw in a cool bonus. So as you know, for the past 6, and I think it's 7 months now, now I'm fast on my slides. We've been working intensively with this tiny beta group for the last 7 months. Had a lot of fun. They liked it. And so what we've done is we've curated and we've packed the most groundbreaking and essential material from the beta class into something that we just named the Core Accelerator because it sounds fancy, doesn't it? Okay, we're going to give you that whole thing for completely free. That's something that they paid $882 over like 7 months because they were paying monthly, right? But you get that for free. So they, like I said, they got a lot of value out of it. They liked it, and you're going to get that for $0 the moment that you sign up today. So if you sign up, you'll probably see it in your account immediately. So the Core Accelerator gives you the absolute essentials to this brand new language learning method we developed called Intact, right? It takes our experience and success at teaching Japanese for over 21 years and then, that groundbreaking research over at the LAG school to create perfectly sounding and feeling Japanese. So again, it's really, if it'll feel more like your first language, which is our goal. Always we're striving for that. And it's something that most people never achieve. So, the reason is obviously everything we talked about in today's, instruction portion. Like it's not a secret. So you can definitely do all this by yourself, but that's what we're striving for here. Let's see here. Oh wait, let me a second. I'm fast again. Jesus. So we're gonna go very meticulous. Okay, yeah. So oh, I see what's going on here. Oh, okay. So here's just a couple things that from different weeks that we covered. I just put a bunch of random stuff on the screen. I probably won't read it all, but like some of the cool stuff that we did was like how to manufacture obsession to learn Japanese effortlessly. That was the first week we did it. Another cool one was in week 5. We covered how to make native speakers auto-fix your Japanese every time you see them, so they're not bothered by it. That was a pretty cool session we did. Week 7, or no, yeah. Also, week 5 was really cool. Have you damaged yourself by doing too much early output? A lot of people wonder, like, can you, they wanna, how much is too much, right? And so that was a cool session we did. But anyway, I'm not gonna read all these. It's just a bunch of stuff that's in there. Basically 7 months of content. So I just wrote like the first couple weeks. But anyway, that's what that is. So you also get that completely free. This is in addition to the regular curriculum and the intact and all the Sangha and all the live sessions you're getting. This is just like a bonus, right? Kind of still gets a little bit better. Let's see here. We want to give you another bonus if you register like right now. We're going to be giving you the Matt vs. Japan Ultimate Q&A Vault. I like that name. I think we stole that from Disney. Have you heard? You know the Disney Vaults? You've heard? Oh, maybe you don't know about it. Oh yeah, they have the Disney Vault where they've got all their stuff, all their secret classics locked up in. Anyway, that's what they call it. So it sounds cool. All right. So everybody that registers today, you're going to get access to this ultimate vault of Matt vs. Japan Q&As. So for 2 years, Matt, you created an hour-long question and answer video every other week. That's 50 hours of content. That's ridiculous, where you literally discuss like everything about immersion learning. And, you know, there really isn't, I've looked at it and there really isn't a lot of things you don't cover. Like, yeah, it's pretty intense. The last people, 50 hours content. The last people that got access to this were Uproot students. So if you remember Uproot, a couple years ago, they paid $500 and they got access to it. You've never sold that other than that, right? So I don't think you plan on selling it ever. But you get it 100% for free if you join the incubator right now. So yeah, pretty priceless resource for an immersion learner. I mean, it's pretty much your life's work for your YouTube career when you were on YouTube. So pretty cool. If you ever had any question about how to immerse, how much, how long each day, what to immerse with, pitfalls to watch out for, literally anything you can think of, I'm pretty sure the chances are that Matt's already answered your question in comprehensive video form. Is there something else you wanted to add to this?
I mean, yeah, actually, what a lot of people have told me is that they actually find these Q&A videos more helpful than my actual main channel videos. Just because in my main channel videos, you know, when I was making them, I had to think about the YouTube algorithm and things like that. And so I had to make them somewhat condensed, even the longer ones, right? But for these were originally just for patrons. That's who I was making them for. And so I had no concern about basically making them concise or like dense or well, yeah. So I would basically just take my time and give every single little thought I had on every single topic. And so if you find the right video of me talking about something, I'll go into crazy detail way more than I ever do in my main channel videos.
That's cool. You have that liberty, right? Because yeah, the algorithm is pretty strict, pretty kibishi. You gotta on YouTube. So that's obviously, again, that's free. So you're getting that free, you get the other thing free. Still gets a little better though. On top of like that huge half off discount, the bonus is worth like over $1,000 or something ridiculous. We also want you to know that you are protected by the best guarantee ever, TM, trademark. We made that up as well, like we made everything else up. We want you to join the Fluency Incubator for 90 days. Let's take 3 months of classes. Come with us on the lives, you know. We'll be there personally to teach and help you and guide you. We'll spend all the time needed to get you learning and implementing all the techniques and the methods that we know, you know. Take advantage of literally 100 hours of bonus content, including the core accelerator and Matt's, you know, Q&A vault. You get access to that immediately. Use all that up, you know, to your heart's content. Squeeze every last drop of value out of it. Learn as much Japanese as you can from us. And at the end of those 90 days, if you decide that if you don't feel the value, then just let us know. We'll give you a full refund. No matter what, we won't ask you any awkward questions. Just money back in your pocket, you know. Plus, you get to keep that free 100+ hour education. So it's a pretty good deal. Obviously, it would suck for us if you left, but like that's why we got to do a good job to make sure you're happy. So I think that's the way it should be. You know, if only study abroad programs did that, then you'd have $26,000 extra. But anyway, okay, recap real quick because there's a lot of stuff there. We've been giving you a lot of random stuff. So first of all, you're getting access to our most intimate group class that we've ever done, Fluency Incubator. We're going to walk you from beginner to completely fluent, live, personally, to guide you every step of the way, get you them same results that we got. And then you're going to get the core accelerator program. That's a full 6 months. That's actually 7 months now. The other people paid $882. It'll give you everything you need to know in order to start learning Japanese immediately with our brand new method called the Intact. It's the best Japanese learning method that we know of, and it's the only one that creates native sounding and feeling Japanese in the student, other than ALG probably. but he's dead, so it's okay. We'll take his crown. I'm just kidding. Meaning it's gonna feel like your first language, right? Okay, so then you're also gonna get that Matt versus Japan Q&A vault. Geez, I feel like I'm an infomercial at this point. You're also getting this. Matt's YouTube's like career, life's work. Basically, with this is like 50 hours of video footage. You'll never wonder about anything Japanese immersion related ever again. And we only gave that away for with Uproot students. That was like $500. So for the recap, you can also save big if you want to enroll right now. You can make the tiny little monthly payments of $147, or you can make it $119 by choosing the annual. So, once this presentation is over, by the way, I should say this again. I said it once. Those prices are not valid anymore. So we're tracking everything. So once this is over, we're going to redirect the page to a form that has the normal price. So if you don't act now, then you won't be able to take advantage of that stupid discount. So if it's sounding good to you, I really urge you to, save yourself a lot of money and check it out before the presentation ends. And all right, so for the recap, on top of those huge bonuses and, the big discount, you also got that best guarantee ever, TM. Take the whole class for 90 days, get 100+ hour education in input-based learning Japanese, suck every last drop of the value that you can out of it. And then if you think it wasn't for you, then every penny back in your bank account, and we're okay with that. We're all having fun here. Most people like the class. Sometimes people get a guarantee, and that's okay. It's not for everybody, but you'll never know until you try, right? And I can guarantee that like you'll learn way more Japanese by trying something than just by sitting around. So, and I think you would agree. So that's why we're trying to make this like as easy as possible for you to enjoy this really cool resource that is available to you. So, warning, not to beat a dead horse here, but again, crazy discount ends when the presentation is over. So we're going to open up the floor to questions now. Yay. We're going to do that for about 15 minutes. So once we're done at the end of 15 minutes or so, maybe we'll go over a little bit longer. Maybe we'll go like 20 or 25 minutes. How Genki we're feeling. So if you want to save a good bit of money, then go ahead and enroll. Because, think about it. You've watched the entire presentation now. We've been together for a while now. You want to learn Japanese through input, I think. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't watch this. And, Matt and I will work our damnedest to give you the best value possible. So go ahead, take advantage of the stupid discount. Take advantage of all these bonuses that are like over a lot. There's a lot of money. And take advantage of the can't lose guarantee right now. So go on over to projectuproot.jp/incubator. Check it out. All righty. Time for question time. Yay. Okay, good. Edgar got the link working. So, oh my God, I'm so parched. Remember, were you parched after you did your presentation? I'm like
Yeah.
super. Okay, so we're gonna do it for about 15 minutes. Maybe we'll go over a little bit, but if we don't get to you, well, I mean, that's another good reason to join Fluency Incubator. You get unlimited questions. You can ask them forever. But anyway, either way, we'll go through the questions now. The way to submit it is, let's see here. How do we do it? Okay, there's a Q&A box. Looks like a lot of you have already submitted some questions. That's crazy.
It was a crazy amount of questions.
It's like, oh, Jesus Christ. Okay, yeah, we're not going to get to all of them, but you can put it in there. And you can ask questions about, on learning Japanese, like in general, like if you want how to learn Japanese by yourself or with any other method, that's fine. You can ask questions about Japan if you want to. You can ask questions about the content that we talked about today. So the whole Marvin Brown story. Or of course, if you have questions about Fluency Incubator, you're interested in the class, you can ask questions about the class. So, excuse me, either way, yeah, it's pretty much everything's game. All right. Cool. Oh no, I dropped my
at least it was empty.
Thank God. Okay. Let's see here. Let's open up that questionnaire thing. How do okay.
Probably right.
I think also I want to turn, let me see here. Is it working? Okay. All right. Edgar, are you there?
Hello, yes, I'm here.
Can you see us?
I can.
Hi, Edgar. Okay. So can you like unspotlight the slideshow so that it doesn't like only show the slideshow? So there's two things open. There's the slideshow and then there's us, our faces. Is that possible? Were you able to do that?
Hold on, let me check.
And I'll check out them questions. Holy crap. I need a mouse that scrolls. This is crazy. All right. Um, let's see here. Okay, right here. How about this one? How much of a difference would it make? This is by Joseph Brown. How much was a difference would it make if someone only read through things like Anki with cards, etc., but only listened outside of that? Would it cause damage or no? People like NYD, what does that mean? No.
Nick.
Oh,
Yes,
Nick. Like
yes.
Nick did this, right? Which Nick?
The singer Nick.
Oh,
Yeah.
Nick channel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, any amount of reading will cause harm. So if you did, but you know, the more you read, the worse. The less you read, the better. So if you did only read in Anki, that basically means if you did a little bit of reading, then you'll only incur a little bit of harm, right? So like Nick, he's super good at Japanese. I'd say he's probably like definitely top 3 of like Westerners who learn Japanese after puberty.
Yeah.
But he's not perfect, right? He still makes occasional pitch accent mistakes and things like that. So it kind of makes sense. If he only did a little bit of reading, that's kind of the results I would expect. Incredibly amazing at Japanese, but not 100% native.
Yeah,
right.
Makes sense. Totally. Okay, so let me put my mouse over here. I feel constricted. Let's see here. I realize I can only reply to Japanese people with expressions and not full sentences because it takes too much time to think about what to say. Any tips? This is by Taro Nakajima. Is this is a Japanese guy? Oh wait, I don't know. Maybe not.
Maybe.
Okay.
But I mean, I think the biggest thing is just more input. Like that means you're halfway there, but not all the way. Like if you can get expressions, right? It means like, oh, it's what you've been doing is working.
Yeah.
You just need more of it, grow and grow and grow. Like then you might have the problem where you can say one good sentence, but you have a hard time stringing multiple sentences together.
Yeah.
It's another problem people say. So it's mostly just you're halfway there, so keep going.
Right. So Andre asked, what do you do in Japan? Occupation? Well, you did the student visa first, right?
Yeah.
And then now we switched over to we're doing this class in Japan.
Yeah, that's like the main thing.
Kind of a unique situation. So if you're looking for advice, probably, I mean, come on over. Maybe you can join the team. You can sit over there. Just kidding. There's no chair back there. Okay. Let's see here. How can I improve with being on, what is this? Let's see here. See if you see any good questions, Matt, just let me know.
Okay.
Because I'm also kind of screening them at the same time. Oh, look. Okay. I currently do time box on Anki and then do active listening to do sentence mining and then watch random Japanese drama or anime for the rest of the time. Do you think this is productive enough?
Wait, can you let me see it again? That was a lot of information.
Oh, sorry.
Well, I mean, it depends on how many hours you're putting into all those things. Overall, then I think that's pretty good overall, assuming that you have like sufficient total number of hours of getting the input.
Yeah.
But
okay. Let's see here. Oh, this is about Fluency Incubator. Any chance I can get that monthly price if I commit now, but can't make the payment till Tuesday? This is by, well, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't say her name. But anyway, yeah, well, yeah. Email Edgar. So Edgar, he's in the chat. Edgar at JapaneseThroughAnime.com. Edgar, could you put your well, yeah. You could see if she can email you. I mean, you're available now, so. And then he'll set you up with something. There we go. There's the email. You can ask a question, he'll figure that out. Okay, let's see here. Are Ken and Matt the Japanese tutors that will be doing the interactive immersion or their native teachers? If Matt and Ken aren't completely indistinguishable from natives, how can I expect to reach native level receiving this kind of input? Thanks in advance.
Pick me.
Oh, Matt, okay.
Well, so we're not mainly doing interactive input, first of all. So the main thing we're doing is helping you with the methodology, right?
Yeah.
So what we're going to help you do is help you figure out how you can go and get a native italki teacher and get them to do interactive input with you. So we're actually working on, for example, like a PDF you can give to your italki teacher that will help fill them in, like it'll explain in Japanese to the italki teacher what the goals of the method are and how you do the approach and things like that. Because a problem people have is italki teachers come kind of prepackaged with their own ideas of how you should learn a language, which are sometimes misguided, usually. And it can be hard to get them to do the learning the way you want to do. So the main thing we're doing here is not actually giving you input. We're working with the methodology, helping you go get your own input.
Right.
Sometimes we do interactive input live to kind of just kind of for like demonstration purposes, give you an idea of what you want it to look for. And when we do that, we actually bring in a native speaker
to
do it. It's not just us.
Yeah. So always have the, also, yeah. So we're not mainly doing that. That was mostly with speaking and stuff. That was Uproot, where we did a lot of speaking practice
Yeah.
and stuff. So we're not, that's not what this is. But yeah, we do use native speakers in that one and in this when we do it. So there is that. Let's see here. Can I pay now and start later when my schedule is less intense and busy? Says another person, yeah. So email Edgar again. So go do that. Edgar can probably hook you up. What's the difference between 120 and 147? It's annual versus monthly. So if you want to pay monthly, then you get a little bit higher price than if you pay annually. So let's see here. For people living in Tokyo, is there an option for in-person class? Oh, we haven't thought about that.
Yeah, I
We never
mean,
thought about
maybe
that.
at one point we'll do like a live meetup.
That might be cool.
Yeah.
We never even thought about
cool.
that. We didn't have enough students in Tokyo. We have like a couple,
Yeah.
but not enough. Oh, that's yeah, maybe. Especially if we get more students that are in Tokyo. Let's see here. Where do you experience that reading early harmed your language ability? To me, it is not clear how this can mess up your conscious pace. You have to read a lot to get faster at reading. If you have a mental L2 sound model, I see no problem with reading. Else, maybe supplement it with an audiobook. Personally, I only started to get good at English as a second language after I gruelingly read a lot, even to the point of headache, because I understood less than 70%. But it took my comprehension, vocab, and grammar to the next level. That doesn't make me a good speaker. You have to practice for that. Again, the only problem I see is reading before having a mental L2 sound model. What do you think? That's by Rio B.
I mean, yeah, having a sound model, if you're gonna have two people and one person starts reading from the beginning, the other person starts reading after they have a model of the sound already installed, the guy who has the model of the sound installed is gonna do a lot better. But there's a lot more to language than just the sound model, right? There's also the grammar, for example, right? So let's say that you're this is something to use English as an example, right? A lot of Japanese people really struggle with when to use the word a and when to use the word the, right? So they'll say like, oh yeah, I just went to like, oh, I'm at a hospital right now. When really we would probably say, oh, I'm at the hospital right now, something like that, right? So there's a lot of people really struggle with that. So if an English learner, let's say a Japanese person, did like a lot of chorusing and a lot of work to install the English sound model into their head, and then after that they just started reading immediately, then the sound model doesn't tell you anything about the grammar, it doesn't tell you anything about when to use the versus when to use or when to not use either, right? And so when they start reading a lot, then they're probably going to be using their conscious mind to analyze, and they might start like internalizing a versus the and kind of on a conscious level, right? And they might get, and then they practice reading, they get really fast at reading. When they start speaking, well, now they've internalized using I mean, of course, when you're reading, your unconscious mind's also going to be involved. So I'm not saying it's not going to be 100% conscious. Maybe when you do a lot of reading, you end up with like a 80-20 split, where like 20, still when you've done a lot of reading, you got faster reading, 80% still the unconscious language acquisition part of your brain, but now 20% of the way you process the language is relying on the more general learning part of the brain that's not geared specifically for language acquisition. And because of that, that part is a lot just weaker at language. It's not nearly as consistent or as robust. And so if part of the way you processed part of the grammar is using that, then it's going to be, you're going to make a lot more mistakes when it comes to speaking. You're going to be slower, you're going to have to think a little more. So right now it sounds like maybe you're actually this person's experiencing some of those negative side effects where they're saying, oh, I'm not good at speaking. That's just because I have to practice speaking more. Well, if you actually learned entirely through your subconscious mind, like language acquisition center, then you might not have to practice speaking to get good at speaking. Of course, you can practice speaking and get good at speaking, but even when you do that, then you're still going to run into those problems where it doesn't feel, even subjectively doesn't feel quite as natural. Even if you practice so much, you eventually sound native, then ultimately what still remains is that subjectively it's not going to feel as natural and as effortless, as transparent as your native language.
Right, you're right. I agree. Okay, so next question we've got, this is for about Fluency Incubator again, I assume. Is the class for beginners only? Is the timing flexible if our schedule changes? Answer is no, it's not for beginners only. And it is flexible if your schedule changes. Colin Gold says, after the first year, does the price revert to full amount per year? No, it does not. So if you want to lock, I didn't even mention that. So if you you can lock in the yearly price because forever if you get it now, so it doesn't revert. Only for people that for way later. So let's see here. Does the money back guarantee only work if I purchase the full year? No, it works for either one. You can monthly or year long, either one. Do you want to answer this or no? Skip this one.
I don't even know what that says.
It says, what do I do at 6K words on Anki? I don't know, John.
What do you do after you've learned 6,000 words in Anki?
I think that's what it's
Probably
asking.
get a lot of input.
Yeah, yeah. Let's see here. Oh, Dee says, I only see the Q&A vault in my library after paying for the month thing. I don't see the other accelerator thing. Where and when does that show up? Oh, shoot. Okay, Edgar, hey, could you take a look at the courses that are granted automatically when people join the monthly? Maybe we missed one. So we can, if you can, Edgar, if you can add it while we're on the call, add it. But if not, I'll add it when we get off the call. Sorry about that. Hazel. Let's see here. But you hopefully, but it's good. She sees the first bonus. She just doesn't see the second bonus. Thank you, Edgar. Okay. When should you start speaking your target language? Is speaking practice bad overall?
Well, speaking practice is only bad if you haven't like sufficiently acquired the language.
Yeah.
So actually we have something that we call opportunistic output, which is something that is part of the intact method, where basically, you start off doing interactive input, right? Where you're only speaking back English and the Japanese person speaking Japanese. Once you've sufficiently acquired the language and you want to start speaking, the way that you go about it is before you say something, you ask yourself, do I know how to say this in natural, correct Japanese? If you do, then you say it. If you don't, then you don't even try. You just say it in English. And then, that act of trying to say it but realizing you don't know how kind of flags it in your brain. And now you've become aware of your own, ignorance, you could say. And then next time it comes up in your immersion, you'll probably have that kind of like aha moment where it like clicks. And then also when you're doing this, you want to instruct the native speaker to correct you and give you feedback. So that way, when you do try to speak, you can get confirmation whether you were right or not, and that kind of helps you calibrate your own intuition.
Yeah.
So ultimately, you want to start speaking when speaking starts to come naturally. You don't have to do it all at once, right? So you probably don't want to just one day after having never spoken before jump into having a full conversation Japanese, because although some things you'll be able to say naturally, other things you won't. So using this kind of opportunistic output where you say what you're able to say and you don't say everything else allows you to kind of ease your way into speaking without forcing anything.
Cool. Okay. Let's see here. Oh, Logan again asks, does the monthly cheaper rate stay if you renew the next month? Yeah, it stays forever. So again, it's like a lock-in thing. So you'll be grandfathered into any prices, any raise in prices. Let's see here. Would you still recommend Anki? How would that fit into the intact method?
So yeah, we do recommend using Anki in the intact method, but we have a very particular way of using Anki. Actually, we didn't go into too much details about the structure of intact method, but the intact method is actually not one thing. It actually is a bunch of different plans, because what we call the Holy Grail, which is the ultimate version of the intact method, is so intense that a lot of people probably won't be able to or even want to implement it.
It's too hardcore for you.
Yeah, it's like too hardcore. But we still wanted to have it there as like so that you can be aware that okay, this is what the ideal would be. And then we have what we call backup plans, which are basically versions that have kind of compromises built in where you're making it easier to implement, but still get like the vast majority of the benefit. And so depending on whether you're doing the Holy Grail or one of the backup plans, it changes the way they use Anki and the way you make your cards, basically.
Yeah. So Anki's not bad, right? It's
Not inherently. It depends on how you use it.
It depends on how you use it. And yeah, there's specific ways to use it that are good. We can talk more about it later, but like we have like several different ways.
Yeah.
So it would take a long time to explain them all.
I mean, hints,
yeah, go for
try
it.
to avoid reading on your card.
Yeah, there you go.
Like audio cards.
That's a big hint.
Yeah.
Try to avoid reading. Okay. Let's see here. Will the course include coursing techniques mentioned earlier for pronunciation? What exactly is the coursing method? So that's Kevin. No, it doesn't. Well, we haven't covered coursing so far. We didn't plan on doing that. The reason why is because we do that in our previous course, Project Uproot. That's where we did lots of coursing.
I mean, up until now, all the current students in the beta version have been students of Uproot already.
Yeah, that's why.
So they already had like we taught coursing and like super in depth in Project Uproot.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's now going forward that there'll be students that haven't been in Project Uproot. Maybe
so maybe we might teach some coursing. That'd be a good thing. Or of course, if you, I mean, we haven't opened Project Uproot to the public yet, so we're not sure if we are. But if we do, then you can also check out Project Uproot sometime in the future. If we do, okay. Let's see here. Frankie says, I'm intermediate level and been pretty damaged by traditional methods. How would you help me if I join the incubator? I like how he calls it the incubator.
I mean, the biggest thing is just to not incur any further damage.
Yeah.
Is the biggest thing.
It depends on what kind of damage it is too, though, right?
Yeah.
Are we talking pronunciation damage or speaking damage? Or are we talking like,
Yeah, that's a
grammar
good
damage,
point.
right? If it's speaking and pronunciation, again, we'll use methods that we use from Project Uproot.
Yeah.
We have a lot of different things, like coursing being one of them, that helps correct speaking problems. But if you're talking about grammar issues, that'd be different.
Yeah, like one of the things is, yeah, we teach what we actually find is the more like quote unquote damage that you are, then the less that output comes naturally, regardless of how much input you get. And so you actually have to start in a sense, counterintuitively forcing yourself to output earlier. This is specifically for people that are already damaged in specific ways. And so we also teach how you go about outputting it in when you're in that specific case where you probably can't expect output to come in naturally anymore because of damage you've incurred. We teach that as well.
Right. Oh, this is interesting. David says, what about Pimsleur? I mean about the early output section of it.
Pimsleur's garbage.
Have you ever used Pimsleur?
I have. Yeah.
That was the first program I used, I think, back in 2003. What is you used the Japanese one, huh?
Oh, not Japanese. I used it when I was dabbling in other languages.
Well,
But,
do you remember a lot? It's hard to
Yeah.
remember. What do you like about it? What do you hate about it?
well, I mean, well, first of all, yeah, they're trying to get you to output really early on, and I
Yeah.
could feel that I hadn't installed the sound system, so I know I'm butchering the pronunciation.
Yeah.
And it just feels very, very conscious and very, very effortful because they're trying to get you to like consciously construct sentences relatively early on,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So just feels like I mean, the fact that it's through sound is good. That's the one thing it has going for it, but it's still very conscious and very effortful, which is not what you want.
Right. Yeah. There are some good things I can say about it that don't relate to early output, but like you just said. But for the most part, the trade-off is a little bit high with Pimsleur. So there's too much bad things that, that with the good for it to be like super recommended. But again, that was the first thing I used when I studied, like 2003. How many years ago was that? 20 years ago. And I managed to overcome the damages. So if there's any damages, it's definitely overcomable. But anyway, at what point would you recommend trying to learn to read? And also, when could I start the monolingual transition? This is by Leon.
Yeah, once you've reached like basic fluency in the language, like once you can understand most things and you can speak, have like daily conversations. Once you've like acquired all the basics of grammar and vocab, grammar and the sound system, then you're good. And the monolingual transition, I mean, if assuming that you're going to do it through reading, you can pretty much start the second you start learning how to read because you'll already be fluent in Japanese. You'll already know all the grammar and the vocab. You'll just have to learn how it's written. It could be possible to kind of do a monolingual transition earlier completely through audio in a way. Like if you somehow had ChatGPT like read you out definitions and stuff, that could be something fun to experiment with earlier on. But that's still kind of pretty experimental.
I almost feel like I shouldn't read this one, but I have good things to say here. Matt used to warn people not to buy Kazumoto's questionable program. How is this program different? By the way, did you ever buy?
I did.
You did buy it,
and I asked for the refund. Yeah.
Did you get it?
Oh yeah, I did.
How much? Which one did you do? He has Silver Spoon and.
I think it was Silver Spoon
or Neutrino or something.
I think I did Silver Spoon. So what Katsumoto's program was literally he just sends you an email every day that just says, "Hey, go open Anki and do 10 reps, and now go watch something in Japanese on YouTube." That's all it was. There was no interaction with him at all. I mean, we have so much content that we work for every single week. We, Ken and I come together, brainstorm session, come up with all this content. We actually respond to what the people have been experiencing in the group, right? So we choose the themes and the topics of the next session based off what came up in the last session. I mean, there's pretty much nothing in common.
We have emails. We have emails.
Well, I mean, yeah, we also sent out emails.
We have emails too.
But I mean, basically, this is what I thought I was going to get when I bought Katsumoto's program. because I purchased it because it sounded amazing, right? If this actually was what it was, then I probably would have been pretty happy with my purchase. Yeah,
Katsumoto, I mean, I met him and I knew him back in 2010, a long time ago. And he was a great guy. I have nothing bad to say about him. We talked a lot back in the day. But he showed me his email only program And he was like, look, it's amazing, isn't it? Because it's so easy for me to make. And I was like, yeah, it is easy to make. So I was shocked that it was only emails, which was very surprising. I mean, to his credit, they're good emails.
I mean, I actually
Good
have
emails.
talked to people that say that they benefited from the program,
Yeah.
that they went through with it.
Yeah.
You know, and they open the email every day and they follow through and they actually got fluent in Japanese. So,
So
I mean,
they're a
yeah,
little expensive for just emails.
yeah, a little expensive, but I mean, provided value to some people. So,
Yeah. So then let's see here. Oh, interesting. Okay. This is by Henry. Given the complexity of Japan's writing system, putting it on the back burner seems very counterintuitive. If we were talking about, say, learning Italian, I'd be readier to go with the advice of letting reading slide. Indeed, I feel very fortunate that I already learned Chinese to a decent level before I started Japanese, as I had a huge advantage when it came to kanji. And even now that I can read quite a bit in Japanese, I would still worry about focusing too much on listening. What would you say to allay my fears?
well, the biggest reason why people struggle to learn to read Japanese is because they don't speak Japanese.
Mhm.
If you already speak Japanese, learning how to read Japanese is actually really easy. And I've actually worked with a lot of people in this situation where well, not a lot because it's pretty rare for somebody to actually learn entirely through listening. But I have worked with multiple people in this situation. And so basically, like how complex is the Japanese writing system really? Hiragana, katakana, let's be realistic, you can learn that in a week or two.
I learned that shit in a day.
I mean, yeah, if you're motivated, you can learn it in a day. So
8 hours
yeah,
straight.
that's like, oh, Japan has 3 alphabets. Oh, well, two of them you can knock out in a couple days, so that's
Yeah.
not really a big deal. And then kanji, if you're already fluent in the language and you know hiragana and katakana, you can learn to read kanji just by watching Japanese content with Japanese subtitles, right? Assuming that you actually understand all the audio already, right? Or also just reading manga that has furigana.
I mean, we actually go into this in detail too, right?
Yeah.
How to learn, kanji from reading
Yeah.
after you're fluent.
But like when you already know the words and you're just assigning visuals to the words you already have in your head, like the brain's very good at that, and that actually comes very quickly. If you study efficiently, then you could probably go from zero reading to like being fluent in reading in like just a couple months, if you're actually fluent in the spoken language.
Yeah, nice. I agree. Okay, we have Kai, and he says, I subscribe to the annual package. How long will this take to get started? I'm worried that you won't start until a month. P.S. Heard this info on a private call with Matt 2 years ago. I couldn't be motivated enough to study since getting red pilled. I love the term red pilled. Hoping this course will help. So we are currently, that could happen if we weren't already teaching the class already. So we currently already teach the class every single week. So the latest you'll wait is like a week because we teach it all the time anyway. So it really won't take that much time to get started for us. So
well, every other week.
yeah, exactly. But what was I gonna say? We will get back to you very soon though. So that'll be within like 24 hours to 48 hours. I'm gonna try real hard to respond within 24 hours. Okay. Let's see here. All right. What do we do with our current Japanese friendships? Do we just avoid speaking Japanese as well as typing?
I mean, that's a tricky one, right? Assuming they don't speak English, right? If they speak English, you can try to speak English to them, have them keep speaking Japanese to you. That'd be great. If they really just don't speak English, then learning Japanese isn't the most important thing in the world, right? Friendship, your relationships probably are one of the most important things in life. So you have to weigh out what are your priorities, what are your values, right? It maybe if you have friends that are important to you, maybe it is worth sacrificing some of your Japanese ability for those relationships. That's totally valid. It's all up to you and your values in your particular situation.
Right. Okay, so there's actually Edgar he said I don't have to read this, but it's actually kind of I should mention this, and that is he said he got a bunch of email requests to lock in the Zoom discount and pay for it later. He's just wondering if that's what if I should address that. And yeah, so you can definitely I mean if you have some kind of situation you want to lock it in for later, that's okay. But we don't have any like cap on how many students we're accepting, but I haven't looked and I don't know how many there are. So I mean, there's some element of first come, first serve. Like if you can pay within the week, then we'll definitely prioritize you than if you're going to make us wait like a month or something. So Probably we won't be able to do a whole month. We'll be teaching too many topics by then. You'll miss too much content. It's like you're probably at that point you're probably gonna miss some classes. So I would recommend within a few days up to a week or something. But yeah, I mean, it's better to in fact, yeah, I'll send everybody an email about that later. So I don't want you to rely too much. All right.
I really want to answer that question.
Which one?
Can you
This
read
one?
though? Yeah, that one.
What if you don't want to stop reading because it's enjoyable? Is it better to read with an audiobook or something, or is it still the same?
So, I mean, in a certain from a certain perspective, right? That's kind of like saying, okay, I want to become more healthy and lose weight, but I just don't want to stop eating McDonald's because I love it. Like, what should I do? It's kind of like, well, you got to make up your mind. What do you love more? Do you want to get healthy and lose weight, or do you love McDonald's? What are you gonna do? Of course, every once in a while.
You can lose weight first and then eat McDonald's after.
Exactly. Yes, you can have the best of both worlds, right?
Just don't eat McDonald's when you're really fat.
And the other thing is, if you're listening to audiobooks, totally great. Like,
Yeah.
all good, no bad. If you're just listening to the audiobook, if you're listening to the audiobook and also reading at the same time, it's better than if you were just reading, but still pretty harmful.
Cool. Okay. Let's see here. This is some of the questions are long, so I'm like having to read it ahead of time. How US centric will the time zones be? I live in New Zealand personally. We don't know because we have to look at the survey. Generally, I and you both have more audience in America, so you're right in assuming that the chances are there'll be more people in America, but you really never know.
Plus, we live in Japan, so it can't be a time that's completely ridiculous for us.
Oh yeah, if you're in New Zealand, he's pretty close to Japan, right?
Yeah.
So we're not gonna make it stupid for people like us on the other side of the world. So we're still gonna keep that in mind. But you'll know in like 2 days or something like that when I get the survey and I can see how many people are in America, how many people are in New Zealand and America and Japan and stuff. Okay, let's see here. When should we start learn to reading? I think you already kind of answered that. Will Anki hurt if I use them purely as a listening practice / testing?
Well, kind of already talked about Anki itself is not bad. It just depends on how you use it. If you have Anki and the only Japanese on your cards are audio, then you can do it actively, passively, any way you want. It's just going to help you and not hurt you. So.
Okay, Kai also says, I did annual and I only see Matt versus QA Japan 2, the Vault. So yeah, we have to, Edgar also sent me a message that he needs my confirmation on, because there's a separate one so I'm gonna have to add that when we're done here, which we should be done pretty soon. So sorry, Kai, and everyone who only sees one bonus. We'll get you the other bonus very soon. Let's see here. As someone who is taking Japanese classes at school, how can I avoid these mistakes when reading is a big part of the class?
That's tough. I mean, be the worst student you can, I guess.
Be the worst student you can? Okay, is that the answer?
Well, I mean, if you signed up to have somebody force you to do something that's harmful to you, like, it's a bad situation. I mean, I almost imagine it's kind of like it's like a little bit different. But you know how like back in the day they used to do bloodletting and they thought that was like good for people?
Oh yeah.
Like imagine you're at medical school and they're teaching you to do bloodletting and they're forcing you to do bloodletting, but you're like the one person who's like way ahead of their time and they know that it's actually just harmful and not good. It's like, what do? You're in a tricky situation, right? It's like no one around you is gonna like they're not gonna be okay with you just being like, hey, I'm actually like you guys are in the middle like in the dark ages and I'm like way ahead of you guys, so can I just do something different? They're gonna be like, no, you're crazy. So I mean, it's a kind of inherently tricky situation. I mean, get out of the class if you can. If you can't, I mean, try to minimize your participation as much as you can. That's what I can say.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, I'm an older American living in Japan. I'm concerned about the time difference. Your wonderful classes might happen at 3 a.m., for example.
Well, it won't because we're in Japan, so there's no way we're doing it at 3 a.m.
3 a.m. would be kind of kitsui, right? So we're probably not gonna do 3 a.m. So don't worry about that. We're on the Japan team too, so we want our classes to be normal for Japan. But let's see here. How detrimental do you count typing?
Well, it's definitely harmful, but that's because like you don't want to train your brain to hear or process the language in terms of hiragana, right? Or like kana at all. So like the way that probably a Japanese kid process of the language. Like before you learn hiragana, you just hear it as just waves of sound, right? It's actually arbitrary to kind of group sounds together in the specific ways that kana does. And so like for example, the way that Japanese people say like, you know, arigatou gozaimasu is almost never the way you write in kana, right? It's generally something like arigatou gozaimasu or whatever. Like they squish it all together. But what I notice is almost every foreigner learning Japanese says arigatou gozaimasu. Like they try to say all the sounds and like squeeze them all in because in their brain it's arigatou gozaimasu because they've like installed the word in formatted as kana, right? Same thing happens in English where people will say things like I would like to go to the store instead of yeah, I'd like to go to the store because reading trains your brain to process the language in terms of ways that it's just not naturally. So yeah, typing would be just reinforcing like viewing words in terms of the kana when in reality that's not actually how the language is in its spoken form.
Right. Sorry, I was like taking questions and getting good ones. Is it possible, this is by MindWipe96, is it possible you guys can send out an email with all the slides of the presentation or like a summary of everything you talked about in this class about the Marvin J. Brown story and your new in tech method for learning Japanese? Yes, we could do that. We do that in Fluent Incubator already, though.
I mean, if you, all of that, all this content is content we already taught, except even in more detail in the past Fluency Incubator. So it will be in the accelerator, like.
Yeah, but this person, I don't know if he's joined in the class. So he's talking about probably for the general public. Maybe? What do you want to think? You want to think about it? Okay. You don't seem too noriki, so maybe not. Maybe not. Matt doesn't like the idea. I don't know.
Maybe.
We'll see. He doesn't like it. Anyway, yeah, maybe we can, maybe I can convince him to just send it just to you or something. But either way, let's see here. What else do we have? How has learning Japanese impacted the way you learn other things? That's a good question. This is by Marine Ho. I don't think I pronounced that right. Sorry.
I mean, yeah, well, I mean, it taught me that the benefit, or I guess the merits of total dedication and hard work and how things take a really long time, but if you put in the time, you can get really, really good at it.
Yeah.
So I tend to sometimes I'm not even interested in doing things that I know I won't be able to totally commit to. Because yeah, I'd rather go all the way or almost do nothing rather than like do it to kind of like a poor level.
Right. This is a great question. What about Japanese nanpa? Does that count as interactive input? Nanpa, by the way, means pickup, like picking up girls.
Well, I mean, you will have to speak Japanese too to do that, right?
You will, yeah.
Or
So
if
that's
you
not
speak English, they'll probably speak English back to you.
Wrong. So yeah, unless you speak only in English, that doesn't sound like it'd work very well though, with the nanpa aspect anyway.
You have to be like, hey, I'm about to hit on you, but before that, I want to lay out some ground rules to help my Japanese learning. That probably wouldn't go too well.
So Jules says, I think that's the way you pronounce it. Will we get a chance to learn more about this Marvin Brown person?
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, I went
in the class.
In the class, I went into even more detail. Like it was one of the dharmas in the class.
We already talked about Marvin Brown in depth.
If you want to learn more, I mean, he has a Wikipedia page, and if you want to learn it, really want to do a deep dive, you can read his autobiography, which I do recommend. It's that's where most of the content comes from that I taught. So
right, yeah, but there is a lot more content in Fluency Incubator that we already covered about Marvin Brown, so you'll find that in the core accelerator. Steven says pitch accent studied formally for new words or try to get this subconsciously.
So in a way, both. So like I mentioned couple answers ago, the way that the intact method is designed is that it's not just one thing. There's actually a few different plans, and it depends on how hardcore you're willing to go. So in the Holy Grail, which is the most ideal plan, you just train yourself to hear the sound system as the very first thing that you do, and after that you acquire everything subconsciously. So you would not be consciously learning the pitch accent of words as you're learning words. You would just train yourself to hear it. And then since you're doing everything kind of like the natural way, you just pick it up like natives do. But on some of the other backup plans where you're not going as such hardcore and you're getting a little more involved in the process, then at a certain point you do have to start consciously learning pitch accent because you kind of involve your conscious mind enough in the process that you can't really expect yourself to pick it up naturally anymore. It depends on which plan you do in Intact.
Cool. Okay. This is actually another question from Jules, I believe. This is an interesting question. I think you'll like this one. How can you confidently vouch for a method that you yourself haven't personally experienced?
I mean, so ever since I started being a part of this community, I've been collecting case studies, right? Of like I've pretty much looked at every single person in the community and even outside the community who has gotten fluent in Japanese or even other foreign languages, especially like Chinese and like other ones that are also equally difficult. And I try to keep track of how good did they get and what are their strengths and weaknesses and how did they learn. And that's a lot of where this comes from. So basically, when I read about Brown, that came from that aligned with all the different case studies that I've seen. And there's like a direct correlation with like how much you read and how bad your pronunciation is, right? Or the reverse, how little you read, how good your pronunciation
And also
is.
how native you feel.
And yeah, what people report feeling when they speak Japanese and stuff too. So yeah, I mean, basically what the intact method is it's largely based on Brown's method, but kind of replacing parts that are in a way that we can replicate it ourselves at home, combined with all these different case studies. And especially, I've actually done one-on-one consultations with people for like 5 years now. So I've worked with individuals as well. So I mean, in a way, like this particular method, 100% in its current form is, you could say, untested, but all the pieces that it's made of come from, if I didn't experience myself, like people that I've worked with directly experiencing, or other people that have given detailed case studies and things like that.
Right. And also, I learned without
Well,
reading
yeah.
and without Anki, only through listening. So
So yeah, it's
I
pretty
can
close to what you did too.
pretty close. I didn't do the ALG thing with having two native speakers, but we're not also doing that either. So yeah, I mean, I'm pretty close to so I can vouch for it pretty well. I'm pretty close to what you'd want to expect. It's obviously better than the way I learned. Like I said,
Yeah.
I did Pimsleur's. The first thing I did was Pimsleur's. So I have
Yeah.
to minus that out, but that really didn't have a big impact on me. Like I did
Plus,
that.
yeah, plus you actually worked with, like, for example, you did interactive input with students for a while.
Yeah.
So we basically just took the best of what we did experience and what we have seen our students experience and just kind of make it like the best hits album.
Yeah, exactly. And so the interactive input especially, and also the comp boosters, I've done that with students for years, maybe like 10 years. And the ones that do more of that learn way quicker and they're way better at the end of 10 years or 5 years, or however long it takes them. The ones so when I do private lessons, like I tell them, like, stop, because they want me to go through like sentences with them. Really, this is early. And I'm like, okay, dude, you need to get more input. I love hanging out with you and doing private lessons, but you should probably do more of this. And so the students that actually like did more like grammar, like sentence work, like they wanted to do it with me, just for some odd reason, they were the slowest learners.
So same as what Brown found.
So yeah. Also, we have Grace in here. Hey, Grace. So Grace is already influenced incubator. I wonder if she's still here. And she says, I have a logistical question. With the possibility of new students, will we all be in the same live session or different ones? Because the first cohort of students already knows a lot about the method. So yeah, Grace. So Grace, you weren't in the last session. I think you missed it. So that's where we talked about that we're actually going to split it up. We're going to have a transition period. So for the original beta students, the students that started 7 months ago, we're going to have a series of like just sessions with just you. We're probably going to do that for like a month or so to transition. And so the original students, they'll have the transition. And then these students too, the new students will also have a transition period. We'll teach them some of the basics, and old students can attend both, but the new students can only attend the new classes. And so we'll eventually merge everybody in about a month. But yeah, in the beginning, we're gonna get everybody up, the new people up to speed, and then the old people we'll still do our little small group together for another month or so, or maybe even longer. But we're gonna do a lot. We'll probably have like, I'm guessing like 6 or 7 just private sessions with the small group before we transition. So that's how we did it. The recording for that, if you want to check out more details, I will upload the recording very soon. I have to, because new students are joining. So you'll see that very soon in your library. All right, let's see here. Should I stop using Hello Talk? I'm a little scared of output, typing and speaking. How do I maintain those relationships? Oh, this is another.
Well, I mean, most Japanese people on Hello Talk are trying to learn English, right? So why don't you just try to transition to you speak to them in English and they speak back in Japanese?
I like that. I like that answer. Due to how damaging dictionaries can be, are lookups for words through pop-up tools like Yomi-chan detrimental to your progress, or is it negligible?
So, like, going back to how in the intact method we have different tiers basically of how hardcore you want to go. If you want to go max hardcore and give yourself 100% highest possibility of reaching full native level, then yeah, you want to never use a dictionary ever. So you want to only acquire words through context, like you learned your first language, right? But that's really hardcore. And so if you do things like using in-text GPT, like we talked about, then you can still look up words, and there might be some small damage, but it's much less. If you only use pop-up dictionaries, but then use ChatGPT, but if you use normal pop-up dictionaries and then in your cards you use in-text GPT, that will be more damage, but a little less. And then if you use like English dictionaries all the time, that's going to be more damage, right? So it's a gradient. It's not like all or nothing. But yeah, any time that you're looking at an English definition of a Japanese word, you're incurring some small amount of damage that's going to leave some impression somewhere in your brain that might come back later.
Great. Okay. Oh, Edgar, he says time check in case you're not tracking. Yeah, I haven't been tracking. Edgar, can you tell me how long we've been doing questions? I have no idea. I think it's way over time.
I
Let's
always
see
love
here.
answering questions. So just keep going.
About 30 minutes. Okay. Yeah, so we've definitely gone over a little bit. You want to do a little bit more?
Okay, maybe just a couple more.
A little bit more? Okay. We have, can you clarify the benefit of the chat GPT method? How do I even ask it to describe a word I don't know how to write?
Well, so yeah, if you're going to use well, first of all, you can just try to write it out in Romaji. ChatGPT is pretty smart, especially if you have the upgraded version. So even if you spell it a little bit wrong, like you don't have the perfect Romaji, it'll usually still be able to tell what it is. And actually, one of the things that we haven't taught yet, but what we're planning to teach soon in incubator is basically strategies of how to do just this, right? Especially because Ken has more experience with this because he worked with Romaji longer and he worked with his students with Romaji longer.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. I didn't I didn't use Romaji on a daily basis because I didn't read it all.
Yeah.
But yeah, when I teach my students, I include Romaji. Yeah.
So there's little tricks you can know, like a lot of times if you're a beginner, you'll likely confuse the like K sound and the G sound. So if you look it up once, you thought it was a K and it doesn't show up, you can try replacing a K with a G, maybe it will come up, things like that. So you can just try just like do it the best that you heard. Another thing is one of the very first thing we recommend in all of the intact plans is ear training to hear train your ears to be able to hear all the sounds of the language. Yeah. So once you do that, you should be pretty good at just hearing a word and knowing how to write it. But also, if you have something like subtitles, you can hide the subtitles and then only use them to copy and paste words that you don't know. That's another strategy. So
cool. All right. This one says, I mostly agree. This, I don't know what he agrees with. He posted that at some time that I don't know. Let's see here. But I never heard or internalized the pitch accent until I began consciously memorizing it. Could this method stop people's brain from playing by English rules, as Dogen says?
Well, I mean, yeah, 100%. Like brown students, like the Thai language has a really complicated tone system, like even more complicated than Mandarin Chinese. And he never taught anything consciously about, well, anything literally, right? So if you learn 100% for comprehensible input, his students were able to acquire all the tones no problem. And so same goes for Japanese, right? If you acquired it all through listening, then you shouldn't have any trouble with the pitch accent. So the reason why most people don't acquire pitch accent is because they're doing things like reading consciously and involving their conscious mind and things like that that get in the way. Because your conscious mind, if you're leading with your conscious mind, you're not going to acquire pitch accent. So this is what happened to me, right? I did a lot of these harmful things. I incurred a lot of harm and I didn't acquire pitch accent. And I had to go back and do like a ton of conscious work to kind of install that pitch accent. So yeah, if you do, for example, the like holy grail in the intact method, then you will acquire pitch accent without having to consciously study it and all aspects of the pronunciation. But also even in the holy grail, we still recommend people to do ear training as the very first thing they do, to like train your ears to be able to hear all the sounds, the vowels, consonants, and the pitch accent and everything else through like chorusing and other exercises. So
cool
so
stuff.
that also make it more likely that I mean, yeah, that if you really do that sufficiently, then that alone should be enough to have a really good accent. So.
Do you want to answer that one or not?
Let me see. I was like really distracted by the
Oh, no worries. I'm sorry. I'm trying to copy and paste our final questions.
Yeah, so I don't lose them. Yeah.
I don't want to lose the question. You don't have to answer that one. I think there's some valuable things there that I should say. But
okay. Well, yeah. Why don't you read it? You're better at reading.
So it says, is this sort of methodology isn't necessarily faster? Why is it that Ken was able to learn Japanese in 11 months versus Matt 3 years, in which Matt did more reading and conscious analyzing? So first of all, I'll answer yes. So first of all, I was only able to understand anime in 11 months, and we've talked about this a lot, and you said it's similar for you.
Yeah. So like when we say when someone says how long did it take you to learn Japanese, it's kind of arbitrary, like where you draw the line.
What is fluency?
Like what is
right?
understanding Japanese or like
Yeah.
learning Japanese? So I put 3 years as like a pretty high bar for like spoken fluency.
It was a very high
for me.
standard, yeah. So for me, the 11 months is like, okay, can I watch my favorite animes and understand what they're saying? You know? And I wasn't watching like super complicated things like Gingai Yu Densetsu or
Yeah.
something. I couldn't understand that. There's still words in Gingai Yu Densetsu that I'm like, what is this? Some Gun Yogo up in there. Anyway, so that's the main thing. And then also you are a little bit correct that, yeah, he did more reading than I did. So there's a little bit of that. Okay, will you provide guidance on helping us decide how hardcore we want to go? What level of intactness might be right for us?
Well, yeah, for sure. And in fact, what we recommend is for you to just start on the highest plan, do it for a couple days, maybe a week, and then if it's too hardcore, you drop down to the one below.
Right.
That one's so great, you drop down to the one below. So then you just keep dropping down until you find what's sustainable for you. And over time, as you adjust to it, you might kind of climb back up a little bit as well.
Right. Yeah, and we will provide a lot of guidance. I mean, we're going to be talking to you very regularly, and you get a chance to ask us the exact same question. We'll ask you, okay, how long have you been learning? What have you done? How have you learned so far? And that'll help us guide you also in the right direction. Would you recommend this course for someone who would like to work in translation and localization?
Oh, totally. Because actually, there's so many fake translate. I mean, I don't want to say fake translators, but like people who like translate as a profession and like don't understand Japanese at a very high level. I mean, a lot of times when every once in a while, I'll take a peek at like the English translation of something, and I can tell that they misunderstood the original. I can understand exactly how they misunderstood it. You know. So if you want to be a really good translator, having an intuition for the language is crucial, right? Because if you just look at a lot, I think the translators they study in school, they learn grammar and vocab. They're just looking at what the sentence is literally saying, but they don't know the deeper nuance of what it's really pointing to. And when you're talking about localization and translation into an entirely different language, you have to really be looking at the deeper nuance that they're really pointing to, not just what the sentence is literally saying. So I think like having a method like this that really puts emphasis on building your intuition, functioning like a native speaker, would make you like in a really good position for doing translation.
I agree. Let's see here. This is an interesting question. So, and we're almost, yeah, we'll do like 3 more or something. We'll have just a few more, and then we'll let everybody go. I think it's pretty late in America. What time is it in America? I have no idea. Anyway, so if we do the program as you tell us to for a year, what skill level can we expect to have? By the way, you can do the program for as long as you want or as little as you want. You can quit in a month, you can quit in a year, you can quit in 7 years. It's up to you. We're gonna do it as long as I guess as long as we're alive, or as long as we're gonna try. But let's see here. So yeah, we don't really necessarily recommend any specific time period. But yeah, what skill level would you expect in 1 year is this question.
Well, it totally depends on how much time you're spending to input, right? If you just show up to our lives, but then outside of class you don't do input, then you're not gonna make any progress, right? Like Ken talked about it in the presentation. The biggest reason people don't get good is they don't put in the time, right? You have to put in a lot of time.
Right.
So this will help you make sure you're using your time most efficiently. But the biggest factor is, are you spending tens of hours every single week on learning Japanese? So if you're really putting in the similar levels of time that like Ken and I put in when we were doing it, then yeah, like in a year, that's enough to like get pretty close to basic fluency. But again, the biggest thing about this new method that we created isn't that it makes the process faster, it's that it gives you better final results. So you can still expect to get similar results as the rest of the other people in the community, right? The main kind of selling point here isn't time. It's that you'll get better final results in the long run, right? So you might reach fluency in a similar amount of time, but once you are fluent, you'll sound much more like a native speaker.
Right. This is a question actually I saw a lot of, some version of this, and that was, does this method apply to advanced learners? One other person said they're very close to being fluent, especially those of us consuming podcasts and things you can't comp boost. So this looks like there's 2 questions here. So maybe the first question first.
Well, I mean, yeah, we aren't designing this for beginners or anything. This is like for anyone wanting to even get better. Like, Even if you're already fluent and you want to, move closer to native level,
I mean, I would
Yeah.
say that like when you're already fluent, it's harder to get better. So
it's
like
way harder.
yeah, way harder to get better. So like it's on a curve. It's exponential, right? The first year you make a ton of progress, but then the second year you make like half the amount of progress. The third year you make like 1/10 of the progress. And so if you're really advanced, it's harder and harder to make progress. So whatever other hints you can get are really beneficial. So I would argue that like the stuff that we talk about might be more beneficial to advanced learners because of that. But I think it doesn't really matter in that way. What about you?
I mean, yeah, I'm already, my mind's going to the second part of the question now.
Oh, go off. Okay. So the second part of the question is, especially those of us who are consuming podcasts and can't do things like Comp Boost.
So the first thing is, so assuming that you're consuming podcasts because you're at a more advanced level, you can actually like a podcast is actually comprehensible to you, then you don't need Comp Boost anymore. Like the whole paradox that Comp Boost solve is before you're at an advanced level, it's hard to find things that are both comprehensible and engaging.
Yeah.
Once you get to a more upper intermediate advanced level, that paradox naturally solves itself because now you're good enough where content that's actually engaging for you is also pretty comprehensible. In fact, at a certain point you reach a kind of Goldilocks zone where there's still a lot left to learn, but you understand enough where things are pretty comprehensible, and then learning, you just have this kind of like exponential growth that's really great. And so assuming you're already at that level, you don't really need Comp Boost anymore. Probably things are just comprehensible in and of itself.
Yep. Okay, and then maybe two more questions. Are there any plans for self-guided version of Intact for those of us who aren't looking for a live interactive class?
I mean, if I come back to YouTube, which maybe I will, I go back and forth on it, kind of like I said. If I come back to YouTube, then I'll teach Intact on YouTube.
Yeah.
So that I'll put all the information out there so people can do it on their own.
It won't be as in depth, obviously, because you don't have time.
Well, I mean, I would have to keep.
But the basics will be there. Like, so none of this is like a secret. It's not like some secret.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I'll if I come back to YouTube, I wanna argue for all these ideas and explain to everyone my reading's bad and make good videos about it.
Yeah.
So it's just not a priority right now because we're mostly focused on the class.
Right. And then also, if you are in the class, I mean, and you can still do a pretty self-guided version of it if you're in the class, right? Because a lot of stuff that we recommend are stuff that you can do.
Ultimately, it's always self-guided because, like we said, most of the work is after the class when you have to go and do input and actually apply the method, right? So
yeah. Okay, and then maybe one more question here. How long are the classes? So what do we strive for 90 minutes, right? But we never make it, or is it 2 hours? I don't even remember. It's always like way longer.
Yeah, it's like at least 2 hours.
At least 2 hours. We try to make it a little shorter every time, but it never works. So I mean, in the beginning, I think we did like 3-hour classes or something. It was nuts. It was way too long.
For everybody.
Everyone was getting tired.
You get super exhausted.
We were having fun, but because it was so late in America, it was a little bit exhausting. So yeah, we try to strive for like 90 to 2 hours, I think. I don't think, maybe not 90, maybe it's 2 hours.
Yeah, you think 2 hours.
You should expect 2 hours, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, and I think that kind of covers it for most of the important questions. Yeah, all right. That's pretty good. Okay, how many questions did we do, Edgar? How many minutes was that?
I have no idea. What did we say?
Okay, it's longer than 30. Okay, we went about 40 minutes.
30, yeah.
Oh wow,
Of course,
awesome.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm getting a little fatigued here.
I'm getting tired. We need some more coffee or something. Thank you everybody for joining us on this live. Maybe we'll do one in the future sometime. It was really fun. If you're joining us on the class, look out for a message in like 24 to 48 hours for us. And we're really looking forward to seeing you again and doing this again. It'll be a lot more interactive and there'll be a lot less people. So that'll be nice because this was a lot of people. We couldn't get all the questions answered. There was too many. But thank you again, everybody. And I can stop sharing that. So also, yeah, this is the last call for the discount. So if you're interested, once we turn this off, I'm going to have Edgar close the page. So if you sent Edgar an email, we might be able to lock you in, but you still got to send it now. So we're going to, once we close this, it'll go away. And then, that's that. So wait, did I get another message from, oh my God, it disappeared. Do you see where it went? There it went. He also got, okay. Oh no, Edgar said that to everybody. Okay, cool. Everybody, thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
See you later.
Thanks for coming.
Done.
Bye, guys.
Bye, Edgar.